Chapter 471. The ghoul servant was the same as the ghoul from before. In terms of cultivation level, it was equivalent to a level 5 desolate hunter. It didn't look too strong, but its skills were indeed very intimidating, and it was 100% loyal to Immerse. Therefore, it should be of great use in certain situations. Next, Immerse rested in the miniature world for another 2 days. Then he continued to hunt ghouls in the ghoul fire swamp. It took them another 5 days to kill all the ghouls in the unforgiving evil ghost fire swamp. At this time, his kill points had reached more than 360,000. However, Immerse was still not satisfied with this. It had been half a month, but he had only gotten more than 100,000 kill points. It was a little slow, so he didn't waste any time in other places. Instead, he went straight to the Yama forest with the most mutated desolate beasts. Of course, the mutated desolate beasts and ghouls along the way didn't escape his claws. When he reached the Yama forest, his kill points had increased by more than 20,000. It had reached 380,000. The Yama forest was the largest forest on the infernal python star. Its area occupied almost 1/10 of the entire infernal python star. In this forest, there were hundreds of thousands of mutated desolate beasts. And in this forest, there were more than 300 kinds of snakes. Most of these snakes were giant pythons. And without exception, all of them were highly poisonous. Therefore, the Yama forest could be considered a veritable forest of giant pythons. For humans, this was a forbidden area. Even if a grand desolate master came, he would only dare to stay here for a short while. Of course, grand desolate masters rarely came to this planet. At this time, Immerse came to the sky above the forest. His draconic psyche spread out 500 kilometers. After a moment of investigation, even he couldn't help but sigh. This Yama forest was definitely the richest and most dangerous forest he had ever seen. If one didn't have strong telekinesis, coming here was almost equivalent to suicide. The species here were rich, and there were many of them. He moved his mind. Bang, 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 bang. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all the mutated desolate beasts exploded. Bang, 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 bang. In just 10 seconds, all the mutated desolate beasts within a radius of 100 kilometers exploded into a bloody mist. Therefore, in these 10 seconds, within a radius of more than 100 kilometers, all the trees, ground, rocks, and rivers were dyed red. A thick layer of blood mist enveloped the area of more than 100 kilometers. At the same time, in Immerse's mind, the kill points were also increasing rapidly. With just this attack, his kill points had increased by more than 5,000. His speed was a lot faster than when he was at the Will-O-Wisp swamp. He continued to fly forward as his dragon consciousness continued to bombard these mutated desolate beasts. Bang, 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 bang. Behind him, he left behind a trail of blood mist that was 200 kilometers wide. As for the infected creatures in the surroundings, they would rush over once they smelled the stench of blood. Therefore, Immerse did not have to waste any more effort to travel. Even if they stayed where they were, there would be mutated wild beasts and infected creatures constantly swarming towards them. Just like that, in just a minute, Immerse had gained more than 60,000 kill points. In just 1 hour, he had gained more than 300,000 kill points. 300,000 per hour was still acceptable. Just like that, in less than 3 hours, Immerse's kill points had reached 1 million. The system's notification sounded in his mind, frowny face kill points, 1 million. Can be upgraded. Upgrade now? Seeing this, Immerse felt a little regretful. If he had known that it was so easy to gain kill points here, he would not have wasted so many days in the Will-O-Wisp swamp. Immerse nodded. Upgrade. The system's voice sounded again. This upgrade will take 12 hours. Please find a safe location as soon as possible. Immerse was a little dissatisfied. In the past, it took 5 minutes to upgrade. Why did it take 20 hours this time? The system's voice sounded quickly. Because the host has consumed a large amount of dragon consciousness, it will have a huge negative impact on the brain. Therefore, you must rest as soon as possible to recover your dragon consciousness. Immerse nodded. Indeed, his dragon consciousness was almost depleted and he needed to rest. With a thought, he returned to the miniature world. Consuming a large amount of dragon consciousness was very tiring. Immerse kept using dragon consciousness to kill thousands of mutated desolate beasts was even more tiring. He slept for 2 days. When he woke up 2 days later, Immerse was still a little groggy. Rubbing his sleepy eyes, it took him a full minute to figure out where he was. He yawned and washed his face. Then he suddenly remembered that before he went to sleep, he was upgrading. Thinking of this, he suddenly quivered and completely woke up. In his mind, he pounced on his attributes. Name, Immerse, level 6 Desolate Hunter, level 10 Long Nian Shi. Immerse could not help but let out a faint smile. He had finally upgraded. At the same time, the kill points in his mind had new change. Kill points, 0/10 million. If he wanted to upgrade again, he would need 10 million kill points. But in this Yama forest, it was not difficult to collect kill points. He ate the food that Emma brought over and rested for more than half an hour. Then he left the miniature world and returned to the Yama forest. In the 2 days he rested, the smell of blood from before had attracted a large number of mutated desolate beasts. With Immerse's current dragon consciousness, he could only kill the mutated desolate beasts that were level 6 and below. But the lower the level, the more mutated desolate beasts there were. So there was no need for him to pursue killing higher-level, mutated desolate beasts. Bang, 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 bang. 10 seconds. Just one hit. Within a radius of 100 kilometers, all the mutated desolate beasts that were level 6 and below were killed by him. In his mind, his kill points instantly skyrocketed. Kill points, 73,321 million. Previously, one hit could increase his kill points by more than 5,000. Now, one hit was more than 7,000. Then, Immerse slowly flew forward. As he flew, he kept killing these mutated desolate beasts. In an hour, his kill points had reached 500,000. In this day, excluding the 2 hours of rest, he had gained more than 5 million kill points. Then, in order to recover his dragon consciousness, he hid in the miniature world and slept again. On the 3rd day, he gained almost another 5 million kill points. In his mind, the system's prompt sounded again. Kill points have reached 10 million. You can upgrade. Do you want to upgrade now? Immerse nodded. Of course. The system's voice sounded again. This upgrade will take 24 hours. Please find a safe place to upgrade as soon as possible. And so, Immerse returned to the miniature world again. This time, he slept for another 2 days. After 2 days, he woke up. He looked at the stats in his mind again. Name, Immerse, level 7 Desolate Hunter, level 10 Long Nian Shi. Chapter 472. Only 9 days had passed since Immerse came to the Yama forest. In 9 days, he had risen 2 levels. He had already reached the level of a level 7 Desolate Hunter. If the other Desolate Hunters knew about this speed, wouldn't they die of jealousy? He went to the personal reservoir to check on the Sea Dragon clone. Sure enough, the Sea Dragon clone had also risen 2 levels. It had reached the level of a level 7 Desolate Beast. It was equivalent to a level 7 Grand Desolate Master. And with the strength of the Sea Dragon clone, it could easily crush a level 8 Grand Desolate Master. If Immerse returned to the Flaming Land now, with the Sea Dragon clone, he should be able to stand at the top of the continent. Even if there were some unknown old monsters on the Flaming Land, they should not have reached level 9. According to the information Immerse had, in the entire Flaming Land, there had not been a level 9 Grand Desolate Master in 1,000 years. In 10,000 years, there had only been 3 level 9 Grand Desolate Masters. And the lifespan of a Grand Desolate Master was only 1,000 years. Therefore, those level 9 Grand Desolate Masters had already died of old age. Of course, there was no guarantee that a level 8 Grand Desolate Master could quickly become a level 10 Grand Desolate Master after taking some medicine. Therefore, Immerse wanted to continue to improve his strength. He wanted to become a grand desolate master as soon as possible. And the sea dragon clone would become a super desolate beast as soon as possible. In that case, he would be able to stand at the top of the continent. Thinking of this, Immerse had a simple meal and continued to kill. Although it was called killing, it was actually just a one-sided suppression. Bang, 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 bang. The desolate beasts exploded again. The forest was dyed red again. The blood mist rose again. In Immerse's mind, the kill points soared again. This time, he needed 100 million kill points to increase it again. Killing for 1 day and resting for 1 day, on average, it was 5 million kill points per day. At this rate, he could level up in 40 days. However, Immerse felt that it was still too slow. According to his logic, if it took 40 days to level up, why would he waste so much effort to come here? So this time, he did not kill for 1 day and rest for 1 day. Instead, he used up all of his draconic senses. After a day and a half, he returned to the miniature world. After resting for 12 hours in the miniature world, he returned to the jungle. He continued to use up all of his draconic senses before returning to the miniature world to rest. Just like that, the cycle continued. The speed at which his kill points increased was a third faster than before. According to this calculation, it would take less than 10 days, at most 30 days for him to advance again. What Immerse didn't realize was that the total amount of dragon intent kept increasing as he continued to exhaust it. On this day, Immerse was flying forward while killing the mutated desolate beast below. About 200 kilometers away from him, on a mountaintop, Li Yundong was in a daze. The group of 5 was looking down at the valley below. One of them said, "Isn't this the Snake Valley? Why can't I see a single snake?" Another person said, "According to the map, this is indeed the Snake Valley." On the other hand, a spiritual psyche master beside him had a solemn expression as he slowly said, "Just because you can't see it doesn't mean it doesn't exist." When the rest of the people saw the spiritual psyche master's expression, their expressions became somewhat dignified. The spiritual psyche master could detect things that they could not see with their naked eyes. Since the spiritual psyche master said so, it seemed that there must be many snake-type desolate beasts in this snake valley. The leader of the strong men said, "No matter how difficult it is, we must welcome back the Phoenix Master this time." When the rest of the people heard him say this, their eyes became fanatical. "Welcome back the Phoenix Master! Welcome back the Phoenix Master! Welcome back the Phoenix Master!" The leader of the strong men continued, "We are only the first batch. Our main mission is to scout the way. There are 5 more batches of people coming later. When the Phoenix Master comes out, our Phoenix clan will dominate the entire continent. Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent. Welcome back the Phoenix Master. Dominate the continent." These people were like fanatical believers. When the words Phoenix Master were mentioned, they were all energized. At this moment, the spiritual psyche master frowned and said, "There is someone 200 kilometers away." The rest of the people immediately quieted down. The leader asked, "Who is it? Is it coming for us?" The spiritual psyche master shook his head and said, "It doesn't look like it. However, he is very strong. Just by using his telekinesis, he can kill mutated wild beasts below level 6. At this moment, he is constantly killing these wild beasts." When everyone heard this, their hearts trembled. "Is it a spiritual psyche master?" the leader asked. The spiritual psyche master nodded. "Yes." The leader asked again, "How many people are there?" "Just him." When the rest of the people heard this, they were a little surprised. The Yama forest was extremely dangerous. Even people like them would only dare to enter it if they were in a group. Now, this spiritual psyche master had entered the forest alone. Was he not courting death? The spiritual psyche master did not explain how terrifying the scene he saw was. This guy was like a killing god. Everywhere he went, he was dyed red. A bloody mist rose. In all honesty, he could also use his telekinesis to kill mutated wild beasts. However, he could only kill level 1 mutated wild beasts. Moreover, he could only kill mutated wild beasts within a range of 5 kilometers. Compared to this guy who could kill any mutated wild beast below level 6 within a range of 100 kilometers, his telekinesis was not enough. His telekinesis is very strong. The spiritual psyche master said solemnly, much stronger than mine. When the rest of the people heard this, their hearts trembled. Someone asked, "Will he affect our welcome back to the Phoenix Master?" The spiritual psyche master replied, "Probably not. He seems to be only killing these wild beasts." Why would he kill these wild beasts for no reason? What good would it do him? The spiritual psyche master replied, "I don't know, but he must have a purpose." The leader thought for a moment and said, "As long as it doesn't affect our welcome back to the Phoenix Master, he can do whatever he wants." The rest of the people nodded. The leader said, "Send this information to the other teams, and then we will go to the Snake Valley to explore." Soon, they explained the situation to the other teams. The other teams also reached a consensus. As long as this spiritual psyche master did not affect their business, they would not provoke him for the time being. Once they returned to the Phoenix Master would be able to kill this guy with a single thought. Naturally, they would not have to worry about anything. However, these people did not know that they were already within the range of Immerse's detection. Immerse even knew the purpose of their trip by plundering their memories. At this time, Immerse was killing these mutated wild beasts while flipping through the memories of these people. As he flipped through, he sighed, "So there is such a thing." Chapter 473. As Immerse killed these desolate beasts, he flipped through these people's memories. From these people's memories, he learned that there was a woman in the dragon clan of the Flaming Land 700 years ago. This person was extremely talented and became a grand desolate master at the age of 30. She was once seen as the only successor of the dragon clan. During one of her training, she discovered that there was an extremely powerful bird type of desolate beast on the Flaming Land. After she killed it, she obtained the blood of that bird type of desolate beast. After that blood merged with the blood in her body, her strength increased greatly. After that, she fell in love with a man from another clan. According to the rules of the Dragon Clan, regardless of gender, a Dragon Clan member was not allowed to marry another clan member. This woman refused to accept and wanted to elope with that man. In the end, when the Dragon Clan found out, they fought. This woman was so powerful that she defeated all 5 of the Dragon Clan's experts. At this time, she was in high spirits and called herself the Phoenix Master. She also gained a group of followers. However, when she was fighting, the man she liked was killed by the Dragon Clan. In a rage, the Phoenix Master started to massacre the Dragon Clan. However, at this time, the Dragon Clan's patriarch accidentally activated the dragon blood in the Phoenix Master's body. Perhaps it was because of the dragon blood and the bird blood in her body. As long as the Dragon Clan's patriarch willed it, the blood in her body would boil, and even her meridians and flesh would be cooked. Only then was the Phoenix Master subdued. The Dragon Clan's patriarch killed the Phoenix Master in front of all the Dragon Clan disciples. However, in reality, he did not really kill the Phoenix Master, because the Phoenix Master was the Dragon Clan's patriarch's biological daughter. As the Dragon Clan's patriarch, his daughter had committed such a crime. If he did not kill her, it would appease the public's anger. However, if he killed her, how could he do it to his own daughter? In the end, he only made his daughter faint from the pain. Then, he secretly brought his daughter to the Python Star of Hell. Because his daughter was severely injured at that time, only the Python Emperor of the Python Star of Hell could save her with thousands of viper bile. The Python Emperor's condition was for the Phoenix Master to marry him. The Dragon Clan's patriarch had no choice but to agree to this condition. In the end, the Phoenix Master married the Python Emperor, and the Python Emperor cured the Phoenix Master. But because of the Dragon Clan's existence, the Phoenix Master could not reveal her identity. That was why he had been hiding on the Hell Python Star for so many years. Now that the Dragon Clan had been annihilated, the Python Emperor had died of old age. However, before he died of old age, the Python Emperor sealed the Phoenix Master in his grave saying that she would accompany him in death. Now, these followers of the Phoenix Master were heading to the Snake Valley to enter the Python Emperor's tomb, open the seal, and save the Phoenix Master. Understanding this, Immerse didn't pay any attention to them. Who cares if you're the Python Emperor or the Phoenix Master? Even the Dragon Clan was destroyed by me, so what do you think you are? In the next 3 days, he saw another 4 groups of people enter the Snake Valley. Originally, Immerse didn't intend to pay any attention to them. However, not long after they entered the Snake Valley, all the surrounding mutated desolate beasts began to head towards the Snake Valley. Within Immerse's probing range, almost half of the area was gone. This made Immerse slightly unhappy. He looked in the direction of the Snake Valley from afar. No matter what you do, as long as it doesn't affect me collecting killing points, then we will mind our own business. But now that you have interfered with my development, I'm sorry. Thinking of this, Immerse flew towards the sky above the Snake Valley. When he arrived, he used his dragon consciousness to investigate below. He saw that there were many snake-type desolate beasts in the Snake Valley below. There were some that were as small as 5 to 6 meters long, and some that were as large as 1,000 meters. As long as one dared to go down the Snake Valley, one would encounter a venomous snake almost every 10 meters. At this time, the desolate beasts that came from outside the Snake Valley were fighting with these snakes. Immerse roughly understood some things by plundering the memories of these snakes and desolate beasts. It turned out that the Phoenix Master was very good to these snakes when she was alive. Therefore, these snakes had always wanted to welcome the Phoenix Master back. However, the Phoenix Master was suppressed by the seal, and these snakes didn't have the ability to break the seal. Coincidentally, these humans appeared at this time. They could break the seal, so these snakes naturally supported them. However, these mutated desolate beasts in the forest couldn't take it anymore. This was because they knew that once the Phoenix Master returned, with her ability, she would lead the entire snake clan and dominate the entire Hell Python star. At that time, the Snake Clan would be the dominant clan, and all the other clans could only submit to them. Therefore, these desolate beasts came to attack the Snake Clan and destroy them to break the seal. At this time, both sides were in a bloody battle. The Snake Valley was said to be a valley. In fact, it was a huge crack that was more than 100 kilometers wide and more than 5,000 kilometers long. If one looked down from a bird's eye view, they would find that this crack was like a huge wound on the Hell Python star. It was also like a big mouth that was opening, as if it was going to swallow the universe. At this time, in this huge valley, an intense battle was breaking out. At the southern entrance of the valley, thousands of mutated desolate beasts poured in. They flew in the sky, ran on the ground, and swam in the water. They surged over like a mountain flood. It was as if they were crushing dry weeds. As they ran, the ground shook. At the entrance of the valley, smoke and dust rose. Smoke and dust filled the sky. And from the other side, a large number of snake clans surged over. They formed a snake tide. Just one look was enough to make one's scalp tingle. These snake clans were of different sizes, long and short, and they were colorful. They crawled over the rocks, the river, and the trees. It was as if a huge, colorful carpet was being pulled across the Snake Valley at high speed. The distance between both sides was quickly closing. 1,000 meters, 500 meters, 200 meters. When Immerse saw this, how could he let it go? Based on the current situation, if they were to meet, there would definitely be heavy casualties. How could this be? Whether it was the Snake Clan or the other desolate beasts, they were all mine. Only I can kill them. Thinking of this, his dragon consciousness moved. Bang, 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 bang. Whether it was the Snake Clan or the other mutated creatures, they all exploded. In an instant, 1/3 of the Snake Valley was covered in blood, and a bloody mist rose. The beast tide started from the front and quickly turned blood red. The snake tide started from the front and also quickly turned blood red. In this Snake Valley, the Snake Clan's density was already very high. Now with the addition of this beast tide, the density was even higher. Therefore, in a short 10 seconds, Immerse obtained 150,000 kill points from this first wave of killing. Immerse couldn't help but feel refreshed. Another 10 seconds. Bang, 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 bang. A bloody mist rose together with the smoke and dust. As for his massacre, he continued. Soon, the kill points in his mind rose crazily again. 300,000, 500, 000, 900, 000, 1, 000, 000. In a short minute, his kill points broke through to 1 million, and it was still rising crazily. Chapter 474. Inside Immerse's mind, his kill points were skyrocketing. Amidst the endless slaughter, this was the only thing he was paying attention to. What he didn't notice was the subtle changes that were happening to his body. His eyes were darker than before, so dark that they were like an abyss. As he looked around, an invisible pressure could be faintly emitted from his eyes. This was only the difference he showed in his human form. If he was in his bloodthirsty demon dragon form, this difference would be even more obvious. However, Immerse didn't know about all of this. Right now, he was only blindly slaughtering. Of course, this state didn't mean that he was about to go berserk. The bloodthirsty demon dragon needed to kill in order to grow. From a moment he became the bloodthirsty demon dragon, he would never go berserk again. The kill points in Immerse's mind were still skyrocketing. It broke through 1 million in 1 minute, 10 million in 10 minutes. In just half an hour, it had reached 30 million. If this continued, it would take at most 1.5 hours for him to level up again. However, as the saying goes, the road to happiness is strewn with setbacks. After more than an hour, Immerse's kill points broke through 70 million. At this time, the entire valley was already flowing with blood. The cliffs, trees, flowers, and grass were all dyed red with blood. The rivers in the valley had all turned blood red. Above the valley, a bloody mist filled the sky. Even the scorching noon sun couldn't disperse this bloody mist. Whether it was the snake clan or the wild beasts, none of them dared to take another step forward. However, the snake clan and the wild beasts both realized one thing. That was, the dead wild beasts were all level 6 and below. If they were level 6, they would be safe and sound. As such, the wild beasts sent out more than 100,000 wild beasts that were level 6 and below. The snake clan also sent out more than 100,000 giant pythons that were level 6 and above to attack Immerse. With Immerse's current dragon will, if concentrated, he could easily kill any wild beast that was level 9 and below. However, if they were spread out, they would only be able to blast apart mutated wild beasts that were grade 6 and below. Now that over 200,000 mutant desolate beasts were charging towards Immerse, Immerse naturally would not waste his time to blast them one by one. Therefore, with a thought, he teleported to the back of the beast tide. The dragons will once again spread out and blasted towards the beast tide. Bang, 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 bang. The explosions continued. In his mind, his kill points were still soaring. These desolate beasts were too simple-minded. They did not know that Immerse had the ability to teleport. With a single teleport, he could appear behind them from the front, catching them off guard. Bang, 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 bang. Immerse continued to bombard the beast horde. On the other side, the snake tribe was watching the show. Their goal was to stop the beast tide. Now that someone was helping them to exterminate the beast tide, they were naturally happy to sit back and enjoy the fruits of others' labor. But soon, it was their turn to be frightened. That was because when a mutant beasts of grade 6 and above in the beast tide started to attack Immerse, they had already gathered a large number of mutant beasts. With a teleport, Immerse arrived in the middle of the snake tribe. He used the dragon's will to bombard the snake tide. The snake tide had no choice but to organize the snake tribe of grade 6 and above to attack Immerse. However, most of the snake tribe could not fly. Therefore, when Immerse flew into the sky, they were practically live targets for Immerse. They could not hit Immerse, and they could not run away. They could only watch as their own kind exploded one by one. However, just as Immerse was in the mood to kill, there were hundreds of giant pythons that all swam towards Immerse. These giant pythons were green, white, red, and black. They were colorful, and each giant python was 1,000 meters long. They were more than 30 meters thick. Every time they crawled through the forest, they would leave a deep ravine in the forest. Hundreds of giant pythons came below Immerse. Then they all coiled up. It was as if they were quickly coiling into plates of mosquito coils. It looked like they were going to catapult towards Immerse. Immerse was also shocked by their operation. These guys were really stupid. They knew that he could teleport, but they still used this method to attack him. When he activated his teleportation, their attacks would miss 100% of the time. However, Immerse did not intend to activate his teleportation. Since they were going to attack him, he naturally had to let them know that the mountains were green, the sea was blue, the hair was black, and the hat was green. Of course, it was not his own hat. Then, Immerse's right arm turned into a dragon claw. It directly slashed toward a giant python that was flying towards him. Suddenly, an invisible force slashed towards the giant python that was 1,000 meters long. Hiss! The giant python that was 1,000 meters long was instantly split in half from head to tail. At the same time, the invisible force slashed towards the ground. Rumble! A huge crack that was more than 10 kilometers long and about 100 meters wide suddenly appeared in the entire valley. The crack was bottomless, and on the ground, there were more than 50 giant pythons that were directly split into two. At the same time, the 100-meter-wide blood river on the ground was directly cut in half by Immerse's claw. The river water directly poured into the crack. This 100-meter-wide river poured into the crack for a full minute, but there was no sign of it filling up. A claw that broke the river. This was the wonder of a claw that broke the river. What was even more surprising was that the giant python, which originally had outstanding self-healing ability, showed no signs of self-healing after being cut in half by Immerse's claw. It was writhing and struggling on the ground in pain. A moment later, it died one after another. More than 200 kilometers away, 5 people were looking over here. Among these 5 people, one was a spiritual psychic. The 5 of them were sent to guard. At this time, the others were preparing to break the seal and could not be disturbed at all. So they sent these 5 people to guard this place. Of course, they were mainly targeting Immerse. If Immerse came over, they would have to do their best to stop Immerse. At this time, one of the level 10 desolate hunters asked the spiritual psychic, "How is it?" However, he found that the spiritual psychic didn't seem to hear this question at all. Moreover, there was an expression of disbelief on his face. This expression made the others very puzzled. "Speak." The level 10 desolate hunter patted the spiritual psychic's shoulder. Only then did the spiritual psychic come back to his senses. Then he subconsciously swallowed his saliva and said, "A claw that broke the river." He said these 4 words. When the others heard this, they were still puzzled. "What do you mean?" The spiritual psychic replied, "He cut the river in half with a claw." When these words came out, the others were shocked. "What? This river is 100 meters wide and cut it in half with a claw? Is he a grand desolate master? Even a grand desolate master can't cut it in half with a claw. This kid, we underestimated him too much." Chapter 475. Immerse's claw broke the river, which made those people's faces turn cold. In the past, there had been people who could break the river with a saber or a sword, but they were all grand desolate masters and very powerful grand desolate masters at that. Now, this guy was clearly just a desolate hunter, but he could actually break the river with a claw. It seemed that they had underestimated this guy. Quickly send a message to the boss and tell them to hurry up. If that guy kills us, we won't be able to hold on. When the boss breaks the seal and rescues the Phoenix Master, no matter how strong that guy is, he will only be an ant in front of the Phoenix Master. So, these people began to send messages to their boss in a hurry. At the same time, more than 300 kilometers away from them, more than 20 people were busy in front of a mountain peak at the end of the Snake Valley. This mountain peak was the mausoleum of the Snake Emperor. Their Phoenix Master was buried here with the Snake Emperor. Moreover, the Snake Emperor had set up a formation here that ordinary people couldn't break. It was even more impossible for the Phoenix Master to escape from inside. These people had been busy here for more than 2 days, but they still couldn't break the formation. At this time, the leader received a message from the front. After reading it, he cursed, "Damn it." The others asked, "What's wrong, boss?" The leader turned his multifunctional watch over. When everyone saw the message, they all frowned. "I told you, this guy is not easy to deal with. What do we do now?" "Boss. Boss, we are the only followers of the Phoenix Master. If we fail this time, or even die in the hands of that guy, then no one will ever save the Phoenix Master in the future." Hearing this, the leader shook his head. "In short, if he doesn't attack, everything will be fine. If he really attacks, we can only fight with our lives on the line. Fight with our lives on the line. Fight with our lives on the line. For the Phoenix Master." The rest of the people spoke one after another. The leader encouraged everyone again. "However, we have found some clues now. When we break the seal and welcome the Phoenix Master, that guy won't be a threat at all." Hearing this, everyone's eyes were filled with fanaticism. Immerse was currently in the middle of a battle, so he naturally did not pay attention to these things. After breaking the river with one claw, he slashed out with another claw. Schwa! Dozens of giant pythons were directly cut in half. Swish! Swish! With a wave of his right claw, the giant pythons were sliced apart. In front of Immerse, more than 100 giant pythons, which were equivalent to rank 10 desolate hunters, could not even last half a minute. When the rest of the giant pythons saw this, they no longer dared to attack Immerse. As for those people who were 200 kilometers away, they all gasped when they saw this scene. Good heavens, this is equivalent to one person fighting against 100 hunters. This guy's too abnormal. Could it be a grand desolate master? That's impossible. The aura he released during the battle was clearly that of a level 7 desolate hunter. How can a level 7 desolate hunter be so terrifying? I won't believe it even if you beat me to death. After Immerse killed the giant pythons, he planned to continue killing the snakes and beasts. However, at this moment, from the mountain peak not far away, a shocking roar could be heard. Roar! The next moment, rumble. The mountain peak collapsed with a loud bang. Huge rocks tens of meters high rolled down from the mountain peak with a loud bang. They smashed into the blood river at the foot of the mountain, splashing up hundreds of meters high. Rubble fell down one after another. Those mutated desolate beasts were all crushed, and those giant pythons were also crushed in half. For a moment, screams, and wails resounded throughout the entire valley. Among the flying rocks, a figure suddenly jumped out. This figure was actually more than 2,000 meters long. It was actually a giant python with a length of 2,000 meters. This giant python was nearly 100 meters thick. On its body, there were scales the size of houses. Under the sunlight, they shone with a blood-red light. Its pair of eyes shone with a cold light. When it opened its mouth, a pair of sharp teeth were like a pair of silver-white arrows. At the same time, as it opened its mouth, a dark green liquid was sprayed at Immerse at an extremely fast speed. Immerse's dragon consciousness had already enveloped this giant python. His figure flashed as he dodged the dark green liquid. At the same time, he was also slightly shocked. This giant python was actually a strong, mutated desolate beast. It was equivalent to a desolate master. Originally, on this planet, a strong, mutated desolate beast that was equivalent to a desolate master would not appear. But now this strong, mutated desolate beast had appeared in front of Immerse, just like that. However, although Immerse was a little surprised, he did not feel that it was unexpected. After all, it was not like he had never seen creatures in the hunting ground whose level exceeded the hunting ground setting. He dodged the giant python's venom attack. Unexpectedly, this giant python's body flipped forward. From its neck, a withered head actually grew out. Two-headed giant python. 2 heads, 2 huge mouths. Each shot out 2 streams of venom. Immerse's figure flashed again and dodged the 2 streams of venom. These 2 streams of venom were dodged by Immerse and landed on the cliff behind him. The cliff was instantly corroded, forming two huge pits with a diameter of more than 50 meters. It could be seen how terrifying this giant python's venom was. Immerse was also secretly shocked. If he was touched by the venom, he would be melted in the end. That giant python's two consecutive attacks did not hit Immerse. Its body flipped forward again. Another head flipped up from its neck. 3 heads, 3 huge mouths, and 3 streams of venom were sprayed out. However, to Immerse, this was simply child's play. This giant python had 3 heads, but he did not expect its intelligence to be so high. This kind of attack was simply a joke. Soon, that giant python saw that it could not hit Immerse. It raised its head from under its neck again. 4 heads, 5 heads, 6 heads, 8 heads, 9 heads. In the end, it actually grew 9 heads. Each head was more than 50 meters wide. And when these heads opened the blood-red folds of flesh at the back of their heads, it was even more terrifying. However, even if Immerse had 9 heads, it was still quite easy for him to hide. He kept dodging the attacks of these heads. At the same time, his sharp claws slashed down. Swish! An invisible force slashed down at the giant python below. Clang, 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 there was the sound of metal clashing. A crack appeared on the huge scales on the surface of the giant python's body. But that was all. It actually failed to cut its body into 2. This surprised Immerse. One had to know that his claw could break a river. Now, it couldn't even completely cut open the scales of this giant python. This guy's defense was really not to be underestimated. Chapter 476. Immerse's demonic dragon claw had always been invincible in the past. No matter how hard something was, under the invisible force of the sharp claws, it was only a matter of a single claw. And now, this giant python scales could actually withstand the attack of his sharp claws. It was really surprising. Immerse didn't know that this giant python had once received the favor of the Phoenix Master and had the blood of the dragon race flowing in its body. In addition, its snake scales had strong defensive power, so it could withstand Immerse's sharp claws. This 9-headed giant python was also very shocked when it saw Immerse break the river with 1 claw. It was afraid that it couldn't withstand Immerse's claw. At this moment, seeing that Immerse's claw only left a small crack on its body, it was immediately relieved. The 9 heads opened their mouths one after another. From the 9 huge mouths, hoarse hisses came out. Hiss, hiss, hiss. At the same time, the 9 huge mouths not only spat out venom. At the same time, it also spat out dark green energy towards Immerse. This dark green energy not only had powerful destructive power, but also had intense toxicity and corrosiveness. If anyone was sprayed, they would be like melted chocolate in minutes. Seeing this, Immerse's figure flashed and instantly dodged the energy and venom. At the same time, he had already arrived at an altitude of 10,000 meters. The next moment, his body quickly expanded. His clothes were torn apart. Scales appeared on his body. On his back, a pair of tattered wings grew. A long tail quickly grew out as well. In just 5 seconds, he had transformed into a giant dragon. However, at this moment, he had changed compared to before. On his back, behind the previous pair of wings, there was another pair of slightly smaller wings. 4-winged demonic dragon. In the legends of the Flaming Continent, giant dragons basically had 2 wings. 4-winged giant dragons rarely appeared, and giant dragons with 4 wings were all mutated dragons that had reached the peak of their combat strength. As a bloodthirsty demonic dragon, the more Immerse killed, the more likely it was for him to mutate. In the past few days, he had slaughtered at least 80 million mutated desolate beasts, snakes, and ghouls, if not 100 million. Such a frenzied slaughter finally caused his demonic dragon body to mutate. He had become a 4-winged demonic dragon. A 4-winged demonic dragon's combat power far exceeded that of a giant dragon of the same level. To give a simple example, a Tier 1 4-winged mystic dragon could easily kill a Tier 4 colossal dragon that was 3 tiers above it. in addition to M.O. Sher's various skills and powerful dragon will. Now, he could easily kill other giant dragons that were 5 levels above him. Of course, this was referring to powerful giant dragons. If he was compared to humans or mutated desolate beasts, after transforming into a 4-winged demonic dragon, he would be able to kill a rank 7 Grand Desolate Master without any pressure. Roar. M.O. Sher couldn't help but let loose an excited roar as he sensed the surging energy within his body. Its 170-meter-long body seemed somewhat small compared to the 2,000-meter-long python on the ground. However, on the ground, the 9-headed python that was more than 2,000 meters long couldn't help but tremble under this dragon roar. It wasn't just this 9-headed python. All the other mutated desolate beasts and pythons around couldn't help but tremble. After all, this was a real colossal dragon. Longwei was vast and mighty, and no one dared to disobey. At the same time, more than 200 kilometers away, when the 5 of them heard the dragon roar, their bodies trembled. They couldn't help but prostrate on the ground. Fortunately, they were far enough away so they could barely hold on. One of them was shocked and pale as he asked, "What's going on?" Another asked, "What's that sound?" It seems to be a powerful, desolate beast. But no matter how strong a desolate beast is, it's impossible for us to have the urge to worship it from 200 kilometers away. At this moment, the spirit psyche master next to them only felt that his entire body was soft. He couldn't help but fall to the ground with a plop. Those people were shocked and hurriedly asked, "What's wrong?" The spirit psyche master made a gulping sound in his throat and replied, It's a colossal dragon, a real colossal dragon, a 4-winged colossal dragon." After saying these words, he seemed to have used up all his strength and couldn't say another word. The others looked at each other in dismay. A real colossal dragon? And a 4-winged one? What a joke. The colossal dragons had been extinct for tens of thousands of years. And even if a colossal dragon appeared, it should have appeared in the flaming origin continent. It shouldn't have appeared in this mere hunting ground. This was like telling me that a colossal dragon appeared in your pigsty. But they all knew that this spirit psyche master rarely joked. Not to mention at this time, they realized that the situation wasn't right and asked the spirit psyche master, "Then should we retreat now?" Or the spirit psyche master paused for a moment before speaking. "No, the Phoenix Master is at a critical moment. We can't retreat. I only hope that colossal dragon isn't coming for us." Hearing this, the others nodded in agreement. At the same time, at the scene, after M.O. Sher transformed into a 4-winged colossal dragon, he circled in the air. Using the wind, he swooped down. Black ice dragon breath. A white dragon breath spewed out. A thick layer of ice immediately formed on the ground. Whether it was rocks, grass, rivers, wild beasts, or giant pythons, they all turned into ice sculptures. The 9-headed giant python also turned into ice sculptures from its tail to its head. Its 9 heads still wanted to make a final struggle before death, but was already too late. Crack, crack, crack. In the end, its head was completely sealed in ice. This kind of ice seal wasn't simply sealing it inside. Instead, it invaded its skin, invaded its body, invaded its every cell, and invaded its bone marrow. From the outside to the inside, from top to bottom, it was crystal clear and cold. For a time, everything within a radius of 10 kilometers was frozen. M.O. Sher's dragons will swept across. Whoosh! All the ice sculptures were shattered by his dragon's will. The 9-headed giant python's body also shattered into blood-colored ice cubes on the ground. Previously, the 9-headed giant python could still fight a few rounds with M.O. Sher. But after M.O. Sher transformed into a 4-winged demonic dragon, the 9-headed giant python was instantly killed by him in a single move. This couldn't even be considered a warm-up for him. Now that he had transformed into a demonic dragon, he naturally wouldn't let these wild beasts and giant pythons go so easily. In the sky, he circled again, turned around, and flew down. Whether it was the giant python or the mutated wild beasts, they didn't even dare to escape under M.O. Sher's long way. Immerse opened his mouth and spat out a red flame dragon breath. Boom! The flames instantly spread dozens of kilometers. Within these dozens of kilometers, there was a sea of fire. In the sea of fire, all the creatures were screaming, wailing, and rolling. At the same time, in Immerse's mind, the kill points were rising crazily again. Chapter 477. After Immerse revealed his demonic dragon true form, his battle could only be described with one word: unstoppable. All the mutated wild beasts and giant pythons didn't even dare to far in front of him. They could only watch him descend from the sky over and over again. Every time he swooped down, he would take tens of thousands or even hundreds of thousands of lives. Slaughter. This was a true massacre. This was the true, bloodthirsty, demonic dragon. Amidst such slaughter, his evolution points were also skyrocketing. When he had killed more than half of the beast tide and half of the giant pythons. In his mind, the system's notification sounded again. Slaughter points have reached 100 million. You can level up. Do you wish to level up now? Immerse didn't choose to level up immediately this time. There were probably millions of wild beasts and giant pythons below. He would kill them all first. So Immerse continued to move back and forth between the sky and the ground. In the end, he killed all the wild beasts and giant pythons. At this time, in his mind, his slaughter points had reached 110 million. At this time, his draconic sense swept across and found that there were almost no creatures left on the ground. Only then did he transform back into his human form. He changed his clothes and returned to the microspace. In his mind, it said, "You can level up now." The system's voice sounded frowny face. "This level up will take 48 hours. Immerse nodded silently. At this time, Emma and Happy had already prepared several of Immerse's favorite dishes. After Immerse ate, he let out a long yawn. Then he hit on the soft bed. Not long after, he started to snort. At the same time, in the Snake Valley outside, those people originally thought that they wouldn't be able to escape this time. Unexpectedly, the giant dragon didn't come over. Instead, after killing almost all the snakes and wild beasts, it transformed back into its human form and suddenly disappeared. Only then did they breathe a sigh of relief. "Quickly report to boss," the psychic said. Because they were too shocked and scared just now, they completely forgot to report to boss. Soon, their boss received the news. Then his expression suddenly changed. A giant dragon? And a four-winged one? When the others heard boss's words, they were also stunned. What kind of joke is this? This joke is a little too much. Maybe it's just a dragon-like creature. The giant dragons had long been extinct. How could they appear here? Even if there really is a dragon, it should be on the flaming origin continent. That's right. Up until now, all of the giant dragon fossils we've discovered have been found on the flame continent. We didn't find anything related to dragons in any hunting grounds. However, the leader of the group did not smile. He knew that since these people would send such a message, they must have confirmed it. He pondered for a moment and replied, "Continue to investigate. At the same time, pay attention to hiding. Don't act rashly." Then he said to the rest of the people around him, "We have to break the seal as soon as possible. Then leave this damn place." When the rest of the people heard their boss say so, they didn't dare to question him anymore. They all nodded and started to get busy again. They busied themselves for another day and night. Finally, at a certain moment, they poured a large amount of energy into the formation. The formation finally dissipated completely. At the same time, the Imperial Mausoleum where the Snake Emperor was buried also collapsed. The mountain, which was thousands of meters high, collapsed. Rocks flew everywhere and rolled down the entire valley. At the same time, the rocks completely covered the entrance of the Imperial Mausoleum. These people spent another half a day cleaning up the rocks at the entrance of the cave. Fortunately, they were all level 10 Desolate Hunters. The leader was even a level 1 Grand Desolate Master. Therefore, it wasn't too difficult for them to clean up. After cleaning up the rocks at the entrance of the cave, they entered the tomb. In the tomb, they found the mummified corpse of a giant python that was thousands of meters long. The upper body of the mummified corpse was that of a human, and the lower body of a giant python. This should be the snake emperor from back then. This caused everyone to rejoice in their hearts. It seemed that the legends of the past were true. Since they had found the snake emperor, the Phoenix Master must be in this tomb. They spent another half a day looking for the Phoenix Master in this huge tomb. However, during this half a day, they searched almost every inch of this huge tomb, but they didn't find the Phoenix Master. Their two spiritual psyche masters searched almost every inch of this Immerse, but they still couldn't find the Phoenix Master. Not to mention the Phoenix Master, they couldn't even find anything related to the Phoenix Master. This made everyone feel dizzy. They had been preparing for hundreds of years. Before their seniors died, they had told them that they must open the Imperial Mausoleum and save the Phoenix Master. Now, after hundreds of years, the efforts of several generations, they had finally waited for the day when the Dragon Clan was destroyed. After going through countless difficulties and dangers, they finally opened the Imperial Mausoleum. However, reality gave them a heavy blow. The Phoenix Master was actually not inside. They couldn't believe this fact. Next, they searched the Imperial Mausoleum and its surroundings for 2 days, but they still couldn't find the Phoenix Master. Although they were unwilling, they could only leave. When they left, these people were a little dazed. They had worked hard for several generations, but in the end, they found that the goal they were fighting for didn't exist at all. This kind of disappointment, this feeling of being deceived, made all of them feel an indescribable disappointment and anger in their hearts. It was also at this time that Immerse returned to the Hell Python Star after sleeping for more than a day and resting in the miniature world. At this time, he was promoted to a level 8 Desolate Hunter. The Sea Dragon clone had also been promoted to a level 8 strong, mutated Desolate Beast. In terms of realm, it was equivalent to a level 8 Grand Desolate Master. And the strength of the Sea Dragon clone could challenge people 2 levels higher. Therefore, the Sea Dragon clone was equivalent to a level 10 Grand Desolate Master. In the entire Flaming Origin continent, it could be said to be an invincible existence. Therefore, the sense of urgency in Immerse's heart was no longer as strong as before. In the past, in order to not be bullied and killed, he had to improve his strength as soon as possible. Now, the Sea Dragon clone was already the pinnacle existence on the continent. Then, he could take his time and slowly improve his strength. It had been a long time since he had this feeling, and Immerse still enjoyed it very much. After returning to the Hell Python Star, Immerse's dragon consciousness swept across. He found that within the range of his detection, the entire Snake Valley was deathly silent. One had to know that in this Snake Valley, there were snakes everywhere. Almost every few steps, he would step on one. Now, there wasn't even a snake. There were only some broken snake corpses on the ground and some broken limbs of desolate beasts. The blood on the stones, grass, and trees had already formed a thick layer of black and red scabs. Chapter 478. Immerse left the miniature world and returned to the Snake Valley. There was dead silence in the Snake Valley. It looked like a completely different world compared to the snake that was full of vitality earlier. Immerse shook his head and looked at the kill points in his mind. Kill points: 13002733100000000, more than 13 million kill points. The next upgrade would require a terrifying 1 billion. Immerse estimated that he should be able to kill more than half of the mutated desolate beasts on this planet. Of course, if he really did kill more than half of them, the 20th hunting island would definitely find out and interfere. After all, killing more than half of them would severely damage the ecology of this planet. The 20th hunting island would not sit by and do nothing. However, Immerse did not care. He had paid 30 million for a year. Within this year, he could kill as much as he wanted. In theory, even if he completely destroyed this planet, there would be no problems. Hence, he continued to kill these mutated desolate beasts in the Yama Forest. However, Many of the desolate beasts in the Yama forest had gone to the Snake Valley. Now, the number of desolate beasts left was much smaller. The speed at which Immerse collected kill points had obviously decreased. After more than a month, he finally collected 100 million evolution points. At this time, he had already killed 2/3 of the entire Yama forest. In the Yama forest, the number of evolution points he obtained was decreasing. Hence, he could only leave the Yama forest and go to the 10,000 corpse forest. The 10,000 corpse forest was a place where ghouls gathered. There were many ghouls there. Moreover, they would often capture humans and kill them, hanging them on trees and letting them rot quickly. Hence, it was called the 10,000 corpse forest. Everyone who was lucky enough to see the 10,000 corpse forest said that it was the most terrifying place they had ever seen. They did not want to go to the 10,000 corpse forest, even if they were beaten to death. At this time, Immerse was heading towards the 10,000 corpse forest. The 10,000 corpse forest was a huge forest. In this forest, there were no mountains or basins. There was not even a small hill. The terrain was very flat. The area of several million square kilometers was so flat that it was as if someone had deliberately leveled it and planted trees. In this forest, half of the creatures were ghouls. The remaining half were other types of desolate beasts. These ghouls could go without food for 10 days to half a month. Therefore, they would not easily eat these desolate beasts. Instead, they would think of ways to find humans. After killing them, they would hang them on trees and let them rot. According to the information, there were hundreds of millions of ghouls here. Basically, their strength was equivalent to that of a desolate hunter. If he killed them all, he would be able to obtain hundreds of millions of kill points. Thus, Immerse quickly flew towards the center of the myriad corpse forest, looking down from where he was flying. Within the 10,000 corpse forest, there were indeed many humanoid creatures hanging on the trees. Some had just been hung up and hadn't rotted yet. Some were half-rotten. Some had completely rotted away. Under the sunlight, it emitted an unpleasant smell. However, not all of them were human corpses like in the legends. It could be seen that the human corpses were only a small portion. There were even more desolate beast corpses. However, most of them were humanoid corpses. It seemed that there was a huge discrepancy between the legend and the truth. After all, there were hundreds of millions of ghouls here. If they all went to eat humans, then there would only be a few billion humans on the entire Hell Python star. Wouldn't they be eaten up very quickly? Following that, Immerse began his massacre in the myriad corpse forest. As the ghouls weren't gathered like the snakes in the Snake Ghost, they were more scattered. Therefore, the speed at which he collected kill points was much slower. Immerse spent a total of 5 days or so before he killed all the ghouls and mutated desolate beasts in the myriad corpse forest. It was also on this day that he received a piece of good news. When he killed the last ghoul, he discovered that his dragons had unknowingly become dozens of times stronger than before. At this moment, a system notification sounded in his mind. Frowny face congratulations to the host for leveling up to level 1 Long Nian Shi. Immerse was stunned. This was the first time he had leveled up unknowingly. Above the Long Nian Shi was the Long Nian Shi, and the Long Nian Shi was much stronger than the Long Nian Shi. Immerse spread out his dragon's will. It instantly covered a radius of 1,000 kilometers. Within 1,000 kilometers, nothing could escape his dragon's will. At the same time, after leveling up to the Long Nian Shi, he had an additional skill related to dragon's will. Dragon's will seal. The formless dragon's will formed a huge formless seal within a radius of 50 kilometers. It descended from the sky. Anything below would be crushed into pieces. And the terrifying thing about this dragon's will seal was that it had 2 forms. One was an area of effect attack form. In its normal form, one seal could kill any creature below the Grand Desolate Master level. The other was a single target attack form. The single target attack form could be used to attack a Grand Desolate Master. Not only could it attack a Grand Desolate Master, but it could also absorb energy from the outside world to attack the target. It could even absorb the energy released by the target to kill the target. This was quite terrifying. The stronger the enemy, the stronger the dragons will seal. Of course, in its single-target attack form, it had a time limit. At most, it could only exist for a minute. Otherwise, if it kept absorbing, wouldn't it be invincible? It seemed that the 30 million spent this time was really worth it. Not only had he leveled up by 3 levels, but his dragon's body had also mutated into a 4-winged, bloodthirsty, demonic dragon. His dragons will had leveled up to the Long Yanshi. If possible, he would rather spend another 300 billion to increase his strength. However, the target planet was already very limited in terms of the increase in his strength. At most, he would stay here for a few more months. After collecting 1 billion kill points, it was time to leave. Therefore, in the next 2 months, Immerse spent his time in killing. His kill points were also slowly increasing. On this day, he had been on the Hell Python star for 90 days. It was also on this day that the system's notification sounded in his mind, frowny face, congratulations to the host for leveling up to a level 9 Desolate Master. Immerse was a little confused. He looked at his kill points. It was only 300 million kill points, far from the 1 billion needed for leveling up. Why did he suddenly level up? The system seemed to know Immerse's thoughts and replied his mind, frowny face. The Dragon Palace Desolate Master refining platform has successfully refined 10 Grand Desolate Masters. The host's level has increased by 1. Hearing this, Immerse finally understood what was going on. This could be improved. The system's voice sounded again, frowny face. Next time, 100 Grand Desolate Masters need to be refined, and the host will be able to level up again. Immerse shook his head. Sigh, this system couldn't be praised. To refine 100 Grand Desolate Masters, it would take 1,000 days. More than 2 years, only 1 level up. It was a little useless. The system's voice sounded frowny face after the Dragon Palace leveled up. The scale of the Desolate Master refining platform can be expanded. Hearing this, Immerse nodded in satisfaction. Seems like this system is quite humane. Chapter 479. Immerse had been on the Hell Python star for 3 months. Since the Dragon Palace refining platform had already refined 10 Grand Desolate Masters, Immerse's level had also increased by 1. He had become a level 9 Desolate Hunter. Looking at his mind, he needed 10 billion kill points to advance to level 10, and his current kill points were only a little more than 300 million. It seemed that it was impossible to advance to level 10 on the Hell Python star. He had to go to a higher level hunting ground. Thinking of this, Immerse left the wilderness and returned to base number 1. When he returned to base number 1, he frowned slightly, but it was only a slight frown. Then, his expression was normal as he walked towards the base. Previously, Enwei had already ordered the employees in the base to be on standby and ready to serve Immerse once they saw him return. A beautiful employee immediately stepped forward and asked, "What's the matter?" "Sir, it's my pleasure to serve you. If you need anything, feel free to ask me. I'll try my best to satisfy you." Hearing this, Immerse looked at the beautiful employee from head to toe. He asked with a smile, "Any request?" The beautiful employee's face immediately flushed red, but she still nodded and said softly, "Yes." She had been working here for a long time and had met many people. How could she not know what Immerse meant? But Sister Wei had already said that she had to satisfy any request of this gentleman. She naturally did not dare to neglect. And since Sister Wei had said so, it could be seen that this gentleman's status must be very high. At the very least, he should be on equal footing with the Island Master. If she was lucky enough to get close to this gentleman, then she wouldn't have to work hard for the rest of her life. But it was obvious that Immerse was just joking. Although this beautiful employee was beautiful, she could be said to be 1 in 100. But in terms of beauty, she couldn't compare to Happy. In terms of figure, she couldn't compare to Emma. In terms of femininity, she couldn't compare to Enwei. Immerse naturally couldn't really have any request for her. Immerse returned to the room that Sister Wei had arranged for him and took a shower first. Then he came to the leisure area. He ordered a cup of good tea and slowly sipped it. He admired the scenery outside the window. Speaking of which, this leisure area really made people feel peaceful. He sipped his tea and enjoyed the beautiful scenery outside the window. It had been a long time since Immerse enjoyed himself like this. This was what life was like. While he was enjoying all this, Sister Wei had unknowingly walked up to him. He also ordered a cup of tea. She picked up the teacup and gently walked to Immerse's side and sat down. "What do you think of this place?" Immerse nodded. "Yes, very good." Sister Wei stroked her hair with a chuckle and asked, "What do you think of me?" Immerse nodded. "Yes, very good." Sister Wei pursed her lips and said, "You don't seem sincere." Immerse laughed and said, "Did I get sick from praising you?" Sister Wei took a sip of tea and said to Immerse, "Have you ever thought about settling down?" Immerse asked, "What do you mean?" Sister Wei looked at the huge lake outside the window and replied, "I'm old and want to live a quiet life. Are you willing to go with Sister Wei?" This sudden question surprised Immerse a little. He involuntarily glanced at the men not far away. Sister Wei was the dream of many men here, and she was the leader of this base. Now she took the initiative to say this to him, which was really beyond Immerse's expectation. "What? You don't want to?" Sister Wei looked into Immerse's eyes and asked with a smile. Immerse shook his head with a smile. "Sister Wei, don't make enemies for me, okay?" Sister Wei also glanced at the other men around her and chuckled. "I'm just joking with you. You've been fighting in the wilderness these days, and your nerves are too tense. It's good for you to relax." Immerse nodded. "Well, thank you for your concern. But even if it was a joke, it still aroused the jealousy of the men around her. Sister Wei's every frown and smile was too attractive. Even such a joke made them unable to control themselves. If it were them, they would have agreed on the spot. Then Sister Wei asked again, "Are you going to leave this time?" Immerse nodded. "Yes." Sister Wei said, "You spent 30 million for a year, and now you want to leave after only 2 months? Isn't it too much of a loss?" Immerse said, "Take the extra money as a tip." "Oh, you're so generous." Immerse shrugged. "I've always been like this." The two chatted for a while. When the sun set, Immerse returned to his residence. At about 3 o'clock at night, suddenly the doorbell rang. Immerse was very unhappy to be woken up by the doorbell. He got up and went to the door. Outside the door was a man. Immerse frowned and stared at the man without saying anything. He had seen this man during the day, and he had a deep impression of him, because every time Sister Wei appeared, he would appear with her. His eyes always showed his deep love for Sister Wei. Was it because he heard his joke with Sister Wei during the day, so he was burning with jealousy and wanted to take revenge on him? Thinking of this, Immerse planned to plunder his memory and check it out. But at this moment, a dagger suddenly appeared in the man's right hand. The dagger was imbued with energy and stabbed directly at Immerse's abdomen. Immerse had been prepared, so naturally he would not be stabbed. His figure flashed slightly and dodged the dagger. Because the man used too much force, he directly fell into the room. He suddenly turned back and stabbed at Immerse again. This time, Immerse did not dodge. Instead, he raised his hand and kicked at the man's body. Bang! This kick was extremely heavy. The kick landed heavily on the man's abdomen. The man immediately flew out. However, halfway through the flight, the man's lower body quickly changed. Almost in an instant, his legs turned into a snake tail. It wrapped around the pillar next to him. Then with a jerk, his body flew toward Immerse again. At the same time, the dagger in his hand also flashed with cold light and stabbed straight at Immerse's chest. Immerse was slightly surprised. This man was from the Snake Clan? Was it because he had killed too many snakes, so he was here to take revenge? But there was no time to think. Immerse's mind flickered, and a chain instantly flew out. This chain was completely black, but it grew with the wind. At first, it was only 2 meters long, but the moment it flew out, it became more than 10 meters long. It directly wrapped around the man's body. Whoosh! With a sound, the man with a human head and a snake body was directly tied up tightly. That person used all the strength he had in his life to struggle. But no matter how he struggled, he could not break free. He naturally did not know that this was the dragon binding rope. It could even bind a giant dragon, let alone a mere snake. Chapter 480. Immerse used the dragon binding rope to tie up the person with the human head and snake body. That person continued to struggle, using all the strength in his body to break free. But this was easier said than done. This was the dragon binding rope. It can even bind a dragon, let alone a small snake like you. That person's thoughts changed at this moment, and he begged Immerse for mercy. Don't kill me. I can tell you. Before he finished speaking, Immerse's sharp claws had already pierced through his head. Then one point, his head was like a watermelon, divided into 6 pieces. That person did not understand why this human was so ruthless until he died. He did not hesitate to attack. Of course, he did not know that Immerse had the memory plundering skill. He had already plundered his memories. It was also at this moment that a beautiful figure suddenly arrived. This person was none other than Enway. She saw that Immerse was still standing and did not seem to be injured. Only then did she relax. She asked, "Mr. Immo, are you all right?" Immerse shook his head. "I'm fine." Enway frowned and said, "It was my negligence that allowed the enemy to sneak in. This person is from the Snake Clan. After hundreds of years of cultivation, he turned into a human. Mr. Immo, do you have any grudges with the Snake Clan?" Immerse smiled faintly and said, "It's nothing. I just slaughtered the Snake Valley." Enway was stunned. Slaughtered the Snake Valley? Immo, Mr. Immo, are you joking? Although she had never been to the Snake Valley. But after being here for so many years, she knew how terrifying the Snake Valley was. It could be said to be one of the most terrifying places in the entire Hell Python Star. Even a grand, desolate master like her did not dare to go to that place. Now, this Mr. Immo actually said that he had slaughtered the Snake Valley. How could this not shock her? And he said it so casually. He called slaughtering the Snake Valley nothing. Wasn't this too exaggerated? After regaining her senses, Enway said, "No wonder. These Snake Clan will take revenge for the smallest grievance. You slaughtered the entire Snake Valley, so they will definitely come looking for trouble with you. So I suggest you leave the Hell Python Star as soon as possible. Otherwise," Immerse nodded, "and there's no use for me to stay here now. Make arrangements for me as soon as possible. I'll return to the Hell Python Star tomorrow morning." "All right." While the two were talking, hiss! A hissing sound came from the other side of the wall. Both of them turned their heads at the same time. He saw a snake head the size of a human head poking out from the wall. Then the second, the third, the fourth, soon, snake heads of various sizes appeared on the wall. The next moment, boom, the wall came crashing down. Amidst the smoke and dust, hundreds and thousands of snakes swarmed in from the outside. It was as if a colorful carpet had been pulled in from the outside. Several security guards were patrolling when they suddenly heard the roar. He hurried over. However, when they saw this scene, they immediately felt their scalps go numb. A chill ran down his spine. Even the scariest scene they had seen in their lives was not as terrifying as this. Several security guards hurriedly fled into the distance. At the same time, they blew the siren. Beep, 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 in the base's surveillance room. The security guard was leaning on the chair with his feet on the console, snoring continuously. When he heard the siren, he was so shocked that he almost fell to the ground. When he looked up at the surveillance camera, he suddenly felt his scalp go numb. F***CK. In panic, he hurriedly pressed the alarm in the entire base. Woo, woo, woo. The sound of an ambush alarm immediately spread throughout the base. Most of the people in the base were in a deep sleep. When they heard the alarm, they hurriedly got up and looked out the window. When they saw the situation outside the window, their hair immediately stood on end. This tide of snakes was coming from all directions. They would bite anyone they saw. Moreover, these snakes were highly poisonous. Once one was bitten to the ground, one would die within minutes. Even if the doors and windows were closed and they hid in the room, those giant pythons that were hundreds of meters long could destroy the house in minutes. The people who flew into the air to escape were smashed down by the giant pythons who were already prepared with their tails. For a time, The entire base was filled with cries and screams. Immerse looked at this and did not make a move to save these people. When he first came, these people were not very friendly to him. Moreover, he had something else to do. When Wei saw this scene, she could not help but turn pale. Oh no, the base's defense system has been destroyed. Then, she pulled Immerse and said, Mr. Mo, let's go to the teleportation hall immediately. I'll send you back to the Flaming Land first. Immerse allowed her to pull him along as he quickly ran towards her. Soon, the two arrived at the teleportation hall's entrance. However, at this moment, hundreds of snakes behind them were not far away. They did not have time to activate the teleportation device. And Wei gritted her teeth and said to Immerse, Mr. Mo, hurry up and leave. I'll help you buy time. As she spoke, she had already condensed an energy weapon on her right arm. She waved her hand casually. Whoosh! A beam of energy swept across in front of her. As many as 50 snakes of various sizes were directly blown up by her energy. She slashed out a few more times, and as many as 200 snakes of various sizes were blown up by her. Then, she turned her head and said to Immerse, Mr. Mo, hurry up and leave. Immerse nodded. Thank you. As he spoke, he did not hesitate and turned to walk toward the teleportation hall. However, at this moment, Wei's energy weapon suddenly aimed at Immerse's back. Whoosh! A beam of energy instantly attacked Immerse's back. At the same time, Immerse's figure instantly disappeared. When he appeared again, he was already behind Wei. Moreover, there was a trace of a mysterious smile at the corner of his mouth as he looked at Wei. Wei's expression changed slightly. You saw through it? Immerse nodded, and Wei frowned and asked, How did you see through it? Immerse did not answer directly and only smiled faintly. You should think about how you were exposed. And Wei's face no longer had that charming smile of a woman. Instead, there was a trace of coldness. In her mind, she thought about where exactly she had overlooked. After thinking for a moment, she secretly shook her head. She felt that everything was done very carefully and there was no flaw in the fake path. How did Immerse see through it? Of course, she did not know that Immerse had the ability to plunder memories. When he had returned to the base, he had felt that something was wrong. He had already plundered many people's memories. In the end, he realized that something was wrong because of Wei. And Wei already knew that Immerse had slaughtered the Snake Valley. Therefore, she had already made up her mind to kill Immerse. Moreover, according to the memories that Immerse had plundered, she had an even bigger secret. She was the Phoenix Master. Chapter 481. Immerse learned a huge secret from Wei's memories. Wei was the Phoenix Master. It turned out that Wei had already broken the seal of the formation from the inside more than 50 years ago and escaped. However, the Dragon Clan was still around at that time, so she didn't make it public. Instead, she found a way to sneak into the human race. Firstly, she was beautiful, and secondly, she was very capable. In the end, she actually became the leader of the base. Moreover, after so many years, her realm had also increased a lot. Her current true strength was already at the level of a grade 9 Grand Desolate Master. However, she didn't make it too obvious. She planned to go to the Flaming Land after breaking through to level 10. At that time, she would be the absolute peak existence of the Flaming Land. But at this moment, Immerse appeared, and he even massacred the entire Snake Valley. Although she was forced to marry the Snake Emperor, later on, she had already conquered the entire Snake Valley. Therefore, all the Snake Clan in the Snake Valley were her people. Those tens of thousands of Snake Clan were also the foundation for her to conquer the entire Flaming Land in the future. After all, the Flaming Land was too big. No matter how strong she was, it was impossible for her to rule every corner. But who would have thought that Immerse actually massacred the Snake Valley? Almost all the core disciples of the Snake Clan were killed. How could this not make her angry? Therefore, she planned to make a move on Immerse. Moreover, she had heard before that Immerse had a lot to do with the destruction of the Dragon Clan. The island master even guessed that the person who destroyed the dragon clan was Immerse. Therefore, she didn't act rashly. Instead, she set up a slow-acting poison in Immerse's room. At the same time, when she was chatting with Immerse last night, she also secretly drugged Immerse's tea. Moreover, she had seen Immerse drink the drugged tea with her own eyes. Even so, she was still worried. Therefore, she deliberately let the Snake Clan attack the base. At the same time, she bought time for Immerse and won Immerse's trust. Only then did she suddenly attack from behind. But unexpectedly, Immerse dodged this attack. However, although she was surprised that Immerse dodged the first attack, the smile on her face didn't fade. You've been poisoned by the Snake Clan's poison. The more intense the exercise, the faster the poison would take effect. Let's see how long you can last tonight. As he spoke, energy beams shot out one after another towards Immerse. Immerse quickly used teleportation to dodge the attacks. Using teleportation, it was very easy to avoid these energies. However, he knew that he wouldn't be able to kill this woman just by teleporting. When the Phoenix Master saw how smoothly Immerse used teleportation, she frowned slightly. It had already been 3 minutes, but he still couldn't kill this kid. Logically speaking, this kid had teleported for 3 minutes, so his poison should have taken effect long ago. Why hasn't it worked yet? Until now, he still hadn't figured out the depth of this kid's strength. It seemed that he had to show some of his true abilities. Thinking of this, green scales quickly covered her entire body. His legs quickly turned into a snake's body. It had a human head and a snake body. Furthermore, her body was rapidly growing in size. In just a few seconds, it turned into a giant python that was more than 5,000 meters long. Moreover, between the gaps of her scales, a fiery red glow could be seen. It was as if her body was filled with magma. At this moment, the remaining people in the base were all shocked when they saw this scene. Even though they were basically all level 10 desolate hunters, when had they ever seen such a terrifying giant python? Immerse looked at the giant python that was more than 5,000 meters long. Species, Hell Python. Level 10 strong mutated desolate beast. Seeing this, Immerse was slightly surprised. After this woman revealed her true form, she was actually a Hell Python. And this Hell Python was actually a level 10 strong mutated desolate beast. This was equivalent to a level 10 desolate master. It wasn't something he could resist at all. Who would have thought that such a beautiful and feminine person would be the leader of the Snake Clan? Moreover, it was the most terrifying species on this planet. Hell Python. Why was the Hell Python star called Hell Python star? It wasn't because there were many pythons on it. It was because the most terrifying species on this planet was called Hell Python. However, according to the previous settings, the Hell Python's strength was at most a level 1 strong mutated beast. But who would have thought that after the Phoenix Master fused with the Hell Python's blood, she had already advanced to a level 10 strong mutated beast? She had directly broken through the settings. This was the most terrifying thing. However, it was obvious that this Hell Python was still not satisfied. The enormous mouth on its enormous head opened, and it was still in Wei's enchanting female voice that emanated from it. But at this time, in this situation, this female voice didn't make people feel that it was charming at all. Instead, it made people's hair stand on end. She stared at Immerse and said, "I heard that you can transform into a giant dragon?" "Just right. I need the giant dragon's blood to complete the final evolution. When I get your blood, I will break through level 10 strong, mutated desolate beast and become a super mutated desolate beast. At that time, the entire flaming beginning continent will be mine." The more she spoke, the crazier she became. Her huge face was full of malevolence. As she spoke, the ground around her began to rapidly turn into magma. At first, it was only 5 meters on both sides of her body. But soon, the magma's range rapidly expanded. 10 meters, 20 meters, 50 meters, 100 meters, and it continued to expand. On the ground, almost all the buildings, humans, and snakes were swallowed by the magma. This was the most terrifying thing about the Hell Python. It could turn the ground within a certain range into magma. This range expanded as the Hell Python's strength increased. And for a 5-kilometer-long Hell Python like this, the magma it could create could reach a radius of more than 50 kilometers. And within the magma's range, all teleportation skills would be ineffective. Within 100 kilometers of the center of the magma, all flying skills would be ineffective. At this time, the magma's range was rapidly extending toward Immerse. Seeing this, Immerse retreated while summoning the Sea Dragon clone. At this point, only the Sea Dragon clone could suppress the giant python of hell. Soon, the Sea Dragon clone appeared. Now that Immerse had advanced to a level 8 Desolate Hunter, the Sea Dragon clone had also become a level 8 strong, mutated Desolate Beast. Its body length had also reached 1,800 meters. Although it wasn't as long as the Hell Python, its appearance was ferocious and full of majesty. At the same time, the long way on its body spread out. This made the giant python of hell unconsciously feel a trace of fear in its heart. Most importantly, although the Sea Dragon clone was above the magma, it didn't seem to be affected by the magma at all. It floated there out of thin air. Its body was winding and full of oppression. Chapter 482. Although the Sea Dragon clone was above the magma, it wasn't affected by the magma at all. On the contrary, it was full of oppression. The Python of Hell couldn't help but feel some fear in its heart. However, this fear not only didn't make it recover, but also made it a little angry. On this planet, it was the absolute king. It wouldn't allow another existence stronger than itself to appear. Fortunately, it could feel that although this creature was powerful, its aura was only that of a strong level 8 mutated beast. It was 2 levels lower than itself. Thinking of this, it suddenly raised its head. It roared to the sky. Roar. In the next moment, a stream of magma spurted out. It attacked the Sea Dragon clone. However, the Sea Dragon clone's figure flashed and disappeared in an instant. When it reappeared, it was already behind the Python of Hell. The Python of Hell was shocked. The spatial restrictions within the range of its magma had no effect on this creature at all. The Sea Dragon clone didn't wait for the Python of Hell to react and slashed at the back of the Python of Hell. Swish, the giant claw slashed, and a huge crack hundreds of meters long and about 20 meters wide suddenly appeared on the back of the Python of Hell. Puff, puff, puff. In this huge crack, boiling magma suddenly rolled out. The Python of Hell immediately let out a miserable roar. At the same time, its body rolled, trying to grab the Sea Dragon clone. However, the Sea Dragon clone was extremely agile. It quickly circled around the Python of Hell several times in a row. At the same time, it spat out a bluish-white dragon breath from its mouth. This bluish-white dragon breath was directly sprayed at the wound on the Python of Hell's back. Boom! The bluish-white dragon breath instantly entered the huge wound. At this moment, the magma in the Python of Hell's body was extinguished at an extremely fast speed and was frozen. One had to know that the Python of Hell's body was 5,000 meters long, which showed how much magma there was in its body. However, as soon as the Sea Dragon clone's dragon breath was released, all the magma within its 5,000-meter-long body was extinguished. In a very short period of time, it was all frozen. At this moment, Immerse's dragon will moved. Whoosh! The Python of Hell's body, which was frozen for 5,000 meters, suddenly shattered with a bang. It scattered all over the ground. In the distance, the few survivors who saw this were extremely shocked. The giant python, which was more than 5,000 meters long, died in less than a minute after it had appeared. It was true that the more handsome one's appearance, the faster one's death. Immerse nodded at this moment. The combat strength of the Sea Dragon clone was far beyond his imagination. No one's will, who was 2 levels higher than him. However, although this was unexpected, it was also reasonable. Although the Sea Dragon clone wasn't a real dragon, its skills were basically the same as Immerse's. Mo dragon breath, dragon breath is moreover. The profound ice dragon breath it spat out was the breath of a real dragon. Python of the Python of Hell was an ordinary creature, assessed. Of the Python of SST to of this TTMO sure, however, used his dragon will to scan the area. Bang 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 bang. The TAS for Mo sure's kill points, they soared once again. In the end, his kill points stopped at more than 5 billion. At this time, with him as the center, a circle of death had formed within a radius of 50 kilometers. All of the Snake Tribe members within this area had already exploded into a cloud of blood mist. Immerse took one last look at this place, then turned and entered the teleportation hall. The remaining survivors made up about 1/3 of the total number of people. Seeing this, they hurriedly followed him into the teleportation hall. In the teleportation hall, they all kept a distance from Immerse. They were afraid that if they were careless and made this powerhouse unhappy, they would not even know how they died. A moment later, Immerse arrived at Hunting Island number 20. The owner of Hunting Island number 20 had already seen what happened on the Python of Hellstar on the surveillance screen. He saw the snake disaster on the Python of Hellstar with his own eyes. He saw the base being breached. He saw the disciples who went to the Python of Hellstar suffering heavy casualties. He was already in despair. One must know that these disciples were the disciples of the top forces on the continent. Although they had signed a life and death contract before going to the Python of Hellstar, if anything happened to them on the Python of Hellstar, it would have nothing to do with Hunting Island number 20. However, these big sects were often very domineering. If something happened to their disciples, they would not care about the contract. Moreover, if they were out in the wild, it would still make sense. However, if something happened in the base, Hunting Island number 20 would have a lot to do with it. Therefore, he had been praying that someone could bring these people back. Even if they could not bring all of them back, at least some of them would do. Fortunately, he saw Immerse's powerful attack later. He destroyed all the snakes. Although he could not save everyone, he saved 1/3 of them. This was already a blessing in disguise for him. Therefore, he immediately came to the teleportation hall of Hunting Island number 20. When Immerse walked out, he bowed deeply to Immerse. He said, "Mr. Immo, thank you. You are the benefactor of Hunting Island number 20. Immerse nodded and did not say much. He said again, "Mr. Immo, if you need my help in the future, just let me know. Hunting Island number 20 will not refuse." Immerse still only nodded. At this time, the island master of Hunting Island number 20 had the intention to get close to Immerse. Obviously, Immerse was the person who destroyed the entire dragon clan. With such terrifying strength, it was inevitable that he could easily crush any powerhouse on the continent. If he could get close to such a person, no matter what he did in the future, it would be smooth sailing. However, his idea was destined to fail. Immerse did not give him a chance to get close to him. He directly teleported away and left Hunting Island number 20. The island master of Hunting Island number 20 was slightly stunned. Then, he smiled bitterly and shook his head helplessly. We're all powerful people, so cold and aloof. However, although the other party did not pay much attention to him, he did not complain at all. Firstly, he did not dare. Secondly, the other party had helped him save 1/3 of the experiencers. It could be said that he was indebted to Immerse. So how could he possibly blame him? At the same time, those people who were saved by Immerse also engraved Immerse's face in their minds. After they returned, they must report this to the higher-ups in the sect as soon as possible. They must remind all the disciples in the sect not to offend this person if they met him in the future. Chapter 483. After Immerse returned to Hunting Island number 1, he began his leisurely life again. This time, it was truly leisurely. The sea dragon clone's strength could already kill a level 10 mutant beast. This meant that Immerse was already the strongest existence on the Flaming Continent. In the entire Flaming Continent, he was the peak of combat strength. In the entire flaming continent, no one could threaten him with combat strength alone. Therefore, he was qualified to rest for a while. As for his next stop after resting, he had already thought about it. He would go to Hunting Island number 22 or even Hunting Island number 23. There were many strong mutant wild beasts there. Now, every time he killed a strong mutant beast, he would get 10 kill points. Therefore, it was the most cost-effective to go there. Just as Immerse was resting, his deeds had already spread among the powerful sects on the Flaming Continent. The strongest sect on the Flaming Continent, the Flaming Origin Ancient Sect. In the meeting hall, 5 disciples were standing at the center. On the left and right sides of the hall were the elders of the sect. On the main seat sat the sect master who had been in seclusion for a long time and had just come out. All of them were looking up at a 3-dimensional projection in the center of the hall. This projection was Immerse. This was drawn by the previous artist according to the descriptions of the disciples and made into a 3-dimensional image. Sect Master, this is what happened. A disciple said. The whole hall was silent for a moment. An elder finally said, Sect Master, based on the current situation, we should try our best to link this Mr. M.O. to the mysterious expert who slaughtered the entire dragon clan. Another elder nodded. Indeed, this Mr. M.O. is very likely the person who slaughtered the entire dragon clan. Based on this, we should try our best to be careful of this Mr. M.O. If we can befriend him, then we should. If we can't, try your best to tell the disciples not to provoke this Mr. M.O. The sect master pondered for a moment and nodded. Send this 3-dimensional image to all the disciples and tell them to avoid this person in the future. Try not to provoke him. If they provoke him, they will bear the consequences. The sect won't stand up for them. When the 5 disciples below heard this, they were all stunned. In the entire Flaming Continent, the Flaming Origin Ancient Sect was known as the top ancient sect. It was a sect that had been passed down since the era of the Great Dragons and had been passed down for tens of thousands of years. In other words, the Dragon Clan was the only one who could suppress them. However, the Dragon Tribe had always been residing in the Dragon Valley and had no intention of expanding outwards. That was why the Ancient Flame Sect was known as the #1 sect on the Flaming Dawn Continent. As such, no one on the Flaming Dawn Continent dared to provoke them. On the other hand, if the disciples of the Ancient Flame Sect were to cause trouble outside, the people of the other forces could only bear with it. Moreover, the Flame-beginning Ancient Sect was famous for being protective. If their disciples were bullied, they would stand up for them. If their disciples bullied others, they would still stand up for them. Because of this, the Flame Dawn Ancient Sect was secretly known as the Protective Sect. But today, the sect master had passed down an order. If you provoke this person, you will have to bear the consequences. The sect wouldn't stand up for these disciples. How could they not be surprised? But thinking about it, it made sense. In the face of an existence that could easily slaughter the Dragon Valley, the Ancient Flame Sect had no choice but to retreat. If that ancestor didn't come to provoke them, they would be lucky enough to have smoke rising from their ancestral graves. How could they dare to provoke others? Yes, yes, yes. The 5 disciples cupped their fists in response. At the same time, the second-ranked Ancient Dragon Sect had also passed Immerse's portrait to all their disciples. At the same time, they passed down an order. All disciples were not to provoke this person. Those who disobeyed would have to bear the consequences. The third-ranked Mystic Moon Sect had also passed Immerse's portrait to all their disciples. At the same time, they passed down an order. All disciples were not to provoke this person. Those who disobeyed would be expelled from the sect. Among the top 50 sects, half of them had passed down such an order. At the same time, these sects forbade their disciples from spreading this news. If they caused the displeasure of an expert, then it wouldn't be a personal matter. There was a high chance that their sect would be directly destroyed. At this moment, Immerse didn't know any of this. Now that he was theoretically the strongest person on the Flaming Dawn Continent, he could relax in peace. He planned to give himself a 3-month vacation. After 3 months, he would go to the 21st or 22nd hunting island. During the vacation, he couldn't always stay on the island. Now that he was theoretically the strongest person on the Flaming Dawn continent, of course he had to take him around and admire the various wonders of the Flaming Dawn continent. He wanted to admire the colorful world of the Flaming Dawn continent. First, they planned to go to the far east of the continent to admire the sunrise on the Eastern Sea. The sunrise on the Eastern Sea was the best place to admire the sunrise on the Flaming Dawn continent. The magnificent sunrise, there was also one of the most famous wonders on the Flaming Dawn continent. On this day, Immerse had already teleported to an island on the Eastern Sea, East Pole Island. Those who came to admire the sunrise would basically come to East Pole Island. There was a tall mountain on East Pole Island called East Pole Mountain. This East Pole Mountain was the best place to admire the sunrise on the entire Flaming Dawn continent. Of course, East Pole Mountain was divided into 9 levels of observation platforms. The lowest level was where ordinary people could admire the sunrise for free. Further up, the second level was the observation platform for officials. The third level was the observation platform for hunters. The fourth level was the observation platform for third-rate sections. The fifth level was the observation platform for second-rate sections. The eighth level was the observation platform for first-rate sections. The ninth level was for the upper echelons of first-rate sects, and they had to be Grand Desolate Masters or above. Only by satisfying these 2 requirements could one ascend. In the entire continent, there were only a handful of people who were qualified to ascend to the first level of the observation platform. Immerse arrived at the foot of East Pole Mountain and asked about the situation. He didn't care. He directly brought Happy to a 5-star hotel to check in. At around 4 o'clock the next morning, he and Happy woke up early and arrived at East Pole Mountain. There was an almighty senior who had set up a seal on East Pole Mountain. They couldn't fly or teleport, so they could only walk up the mountain. The 2 of them arrived at the observation platform at the lowest level. The observation platform here was huge, occupying an area the size of dozens of soccer fields. However, even such a huge observation platform was already packed with people. Immerse held Happy's hand, and under everyone's envious gazes, they slowly climbed up the stairs by the side. Soon, they arrived at the second level. The second level was the observation platform for officials. One had to show an official certificate to enter. The people on the observation platform were all very dignified. The officials who could come to East Pole Island weren't minor officials. However, Immerse didn't care. He pulled Happy up the stairs. The third level was the observation platform for desolate hunters. There weren't many desolate hunters on the Flaming Dawn continent. Therefore, the observation platform here was much smaller, and there weren't many people here. Happy gestured to Immerse, "Let's do it here." Immerse shook his head and lowered his head. "No matter what it is, I'll give you the best. So, let's go to the top level." Chapter 484. No matter what it was, Immerse wanted to give Happy the best. Therefore, he said to Happy, "Let's go to the top floor." At this moment, on the stone steps leading to the top floor, a beautiful woman who looked to be in her 40s was slowly walking up the stairs. She was dressed in white and looked like a fairy. When the disciples of the first-rate sects on the 8th floor saw this person, their eyes were filled with envy. "What a fairy! Who is she?" "Keep your voice down. Those who are qualified to go to the top floor are the upper echelons of the first-rate sections. They are either sect leaders or elders. Moreover, they have to be Grand Desolate Masters. So, she must be the upper echelon of a large sect. I know her. She is the sect leader of the third-ranked Mystic Moon female sect, Qian Xianwei. No wonder she's the third-ranked sect. I heard that sect leader Qian has lived for more than 800 years and has already reached level 7 Grand Desolate Master. So strong. With Qian Xuanyue's strength, she could naturally hear the discussions of these disciples. However, she did not care. She came here today to reminisce. When she was young, this mountain did not have any restrictions. When she was watching the sunrise on the top floor of this mountain, she met a young man by chance. From then on, the two fell in love. Later, when she was in danger, The young man fell into thousands of ice caves and died in order to save her. Since then, she would come here every year to watch the sunrise on this day. At this moment, she came to the entrance of the top floor of the observation platform. A desolate hunter who was in charge of guarding the entrance of the observation platform saw Qian Xianyue walking up step by step. He hurriedly greeted her and said, "Sect Leader Qian, you're here. Please come in." As he spoke, he bent down and made a respectful gesture. Qian Xianyue was an expert of the third-ranked sect on the continent, so these guards would naturally be respectful to her. Qian Xianyue nodded slightly and then entered the observation platform. She was the only one on the top floor of the observation platform. She walked to the leftmost position and sat on the bench that she was used to. She silently looked at the horizon that had just turned white. The guards were whispering to each other. "Who was that just now? Why are you so respectful to her?" It was obvious that the guard who asked the question was new. The guard from before said, "Didn't you receive training before taking up the post?" The people on the top floor are basically the sect masters and elders of first-rate sects. You have to recognize all of them. The guard who asked the question smiled awkwardly and said that there are indeed a lot of people. In the top 10 sects, there are 10 sect masters and over 100 elders. Another guard next to him glared at him and said, "That's right. No matter how many things there are, you have to remember them. These people are all big shots, and we can't afford to offend any of them." She was the sect leader of the Mystic Moon female sect, Qian Xianyue, a level 7 desolate hunter. It said that her strength can be ranked in the top 5 in the entire continent. Hiss! The guard who asked the question sucked in a breath of cold air. A guard next to him said, "So you'd better go back and do more homework. Otherwise, you might lose your head if you're not careful." Moving my head is a small matter, but implicating your entire family is a big matter. The guard who asked the question nodded repeatedly. "Okay, I'll record everyone's names when I get back today." While they were talking, Immerse and Happy also walked up the mountain path. When the guard saw them, they took a few careful glances. They didn't know these two people. However, this girl was very beautiful. Even so, they still stopped Immerse and Happy. "I'm sorry, no trespassing is allowed on the observation deck on the top floor," an old guard said. However, although he used the words, "I'm sorry," he didn't mean it all. Instead, his tone was very tough. Immerse originally wanted to talk to them nicely. However, they were so rude and unreasonable as soon as they came up. Immerse didn't need to indulge them. His voice was slightly cold as he said, "We're all here to enjoy the sunrise. There's no need to divide them into ranks. Aren't you being too unreasonable by doing this?" That guard chuckled twice. "Unreasonable? You're right. In the East Pole, the Island Master is the reason. This is the rule of the Island Master, so we have to follow the rules." The other guard waved his hand impatiently and shooed Immerse away as if he was shooing away a fly. "Go, go, go. Go to wherever it's cool." Immerse sneered. He was just about to make a move to scare these people. However, at this moment, Qian Xianyue heard the noise. She couldn't help but turn her head. When she turned her head, she saw a familiar face. Her heart skipped a beat. She had never seen the owner of this face before. However, she couldn't be more familiar with this face. This was the person that the disciples sent back a few days ago. The person who could summon a powerful creature and destroy a level 10 mutated desolate beast. Moreover, it was very likely that he was the one who slaughtered the entire Dragon Valley. The Mystic Moon sect had also done an investigation. This person's name was Immerse, the Island Master of Hunting Island Number 1, and he had an even more domineering title, Dragon Lord. Although she didn't know why some of his subordinates called him Dragon Lord, he was able to destroy the Dragon Valley that had been passed down for tens of thousands of years by himself. It was not an exaggeration to call him Dragon Lord. Thinking of this, she quickly stood up and walked to the entrance. She said, "Greetings, Dragon Lord." This was the first time she met Immerse. She didn't know whether to call him Dragon Lord or Island Master Mo. However, after thinking about it, the title Dragon Lord was more domineering than Island Master Mo. Perhaps he would like this title more. Immerse was a little surprised. He looked at the woman from head to toe. He was sure that they didn't know each other. He asked, "You are?" Qian Xianyue hurriedly introduced herself with a smile. "Oh, I'm the sect leader of the Mystic Moon sect, Qian Xianyue." Immerse was puzzled. "Do we know each other?" Qian Xianyue shook her head and said, "We haven't met before, but Island Master Imo, Dragon Lord, your name is like thunder to my ears." The guards next to them were all a little confused. Qian Xianyue was definitely one of the top people on the continent. She was ranked in the top 5 in terms of strength. But now, she was so respectful to this young man. Could it be that this young man was stronger than her and had a higher status than her? However, no matter how hard the guards racked their brains, they couldn't think of such a young man in the top 5. Seeing that the guards were still in a daze, Qian Xianyue couldn't help but frown slightly. "What are you waiting for? Hurry up and invite the Dragon Lord in." She was actually doing this out of kindness. This Dragon Lord was a vicious and merciless person. He had slaughtered so many people in the Dragon Valley. He had also killed so many snakes on the Hell Python Star. Moreover, it was said that when he saw the disciples of the various sects in trouble, he had no intention of saving them. In the end, he had saved 1/3 of them unintentionally. From this, it could be seen how hard-hearted this Dragon Lord was. In the face of such a person, if he was unhappy, it was very likely that he would casually kill these guards. He just nodded and said, "Okay." For such a big event, he felt more at ease with an older person by his side. At the same time, on the observation deck, Immerse and Happy chose a seat and sat down. Seeing that the eastern sky was getting brighter and brighter, the two of them focused their attention on the eastern horizon. At this moment, the sect master of the Mystic Moon sect, Qian Xianyue, who was sitting not far away from them, was feeling nervous. In this situation, was she a third wheel? Should she leave? But if she left, wouldn't it seem too deliberate? Moreover, the Dragon Lord and Qian Xianyue were obviously in the zone. If she caused any trouble at this time, wouldn't it be too abrupt? Who would have thought that Qian Xianyue, who had lived for more than 800 years, would be so nervous and unable to make up her mind? The contrast between this and her fairy-like appearance was too great. In fact, she couldn't be blamed. Although she had experienced great storms and seen everything, she had something that she cared about. However, she had something she cared about, and that was her entire Mystic Moon female sect. Once a person had something that they cared about, they would be worried about gains and losses when they encountered something, especially the person in front of her. He could even destroy the Dragon Valley, let alone the Mystic Moon sect. If something went wrong and made him unhappy, it would definitely be a disaster for the entire Mystic Moon sect. Therefore, she had to be careful. Immerse didn't know what Qian Xianyue was thinking. He originally wanted to try to plunder her memory. However, Qian Xianyue was a full realm higher than him. He tried a few times, but he didn't succeed, so he simply stopped plundering. At this moment, the white of the eastern sky had turned light red. Slowly, the range of the light red became larger and larger. In the end, almost the entire eastern sky turned crimson. A moment later, a red dot appeared from where the water met in the east. One could hear someone shouting from the observation deck below, "It's coming out, it's coming out." Immerse hugged Happy, and the two of them subconsciously leaned close to each other. Not far away, Qian Xianyue's eyes gradually became blurry when she saw this scene. She recalled every sunrise that she had watched with that man. A moment later, a red arc gradually rose. It was not like the sunrise on Earth, where the sun was so small. The sunrise here was very big. This arc almost occupied the entire sea in the east. Then, it was a semicircle. Finally, a red sun that occupied almost half of the sky broke free from the sea and jumped out. The entire eastern sky and sea were dyed red by this huge sun. Looking around, their vision was filled with the sun. This scene was extremely shocking. When the people who were still noisy saw this, they all fell silent for a long time. They were all so shocked that they couldn't speak. When Immerse and Happy saw the huge red sun, both of them were deeply shocked. After a long time, a thought appeared in Immerse's mind. He asked, "Happy, do you want to watch such a sunrise every day?" Happy nodded. "Yes," Immerse said. "Then from now on, we'll watch the sunrise every day in Miniature World." In Miniature World, he was a god. It was not difficult for him to create such a sunrise. Of course, Miniature World was still too small for now. He could only create such a sunrise visually. If he wanted to create such a sunrise, he would have to wait until Miniature World was upgraded in the future. After watching the sunrise, Immerse asked Happy, "Happy, where else do you want to go? I'll take you there." When Qianxinhua heard this question, her heart skipped a beat. Hundreds of years ago, that young man had asked her the same question. He had said that he would take her to see all the beautiful scenery in the world. However, thinking of this, Qianxinhua could not help but hold her breath and wait quietly for Happy's answer. Chapter 486. After hearing Immerse's question, Qianxinhua immediately held her breath and waited for Happy's answer. That young man had also asked her the same question. Her answer was that as long as she was with him, she was willing to go anywhere. He wanted to hear if this girl had the same answer as him. However, this girl called Happy did not answer. She just leaned her head on Dragon Lord's shoulder. The two of them just leaned on each other. At this moment, even Qianxinhua understood what she meant. As long as the two of them were together, she was willing to go anywhere. Qianxinhua looked at the two of them in a daze. Her thoughts went back to hundreds of years ago, when the two of them leaned on each other and watched the sunrise. Gradually, the gigantic red sun rose higher and lower, and gradually became smaller. The people watching the sunrise also went down the mountain. However, after they went down the mountain, they did not immediately disperse. Instead, they stayed at the foot of the mountain and waited for the people coming down. The ordinary people at the bottom of the mountain went down first. Then they all stopped. After a while, the officials and desolate hunters came down one after another. Look, those are all desolate hunters. Damn, I've lived for a few decades, but I've never seen more than 10 hunters. Today I saw so many of them at once. If only I could become a desolate hunter like them. At this moment, someone shouted, "The disciples of the first-rate forces are coming down." Among the first-rate forces today, there are no disciples of the Ancient Flame sect or the Ancient Dragon sect. Among the top 10 sects, there are only some female disciples from the Mystic Moon female sect. Mystic Moon female sect? Are they those female disciples who are so beautiful? TSK, they're all beauties. It's really killing me. If I can have a girlfriend like her, even if I die immediately, it will be worth it. Come on. These disciples of the Mystic Moon female sect are not people you can associate with. You have to be a disciple of one of the top 10 first-rate forces. Sai, I'm just saying, we can only look at these disciples from afar. As they spoke, more than 20 female disciples of the Mystic Moon female sect stood at the foot of the mountain. They were all dressed in white and looked like fairies descending from the clouds. However, at this moment, these fairy-like women were divided into 2 rows at the foot of the mountain, facing the mountain. All of them lowered their heads and bowed respectfully. They seemed to be waiting for someone. From the looks of it, his status should be much higher than theirs. Other than the upper echelons of those first-rate forces, there's probably no one else. Not long after, a woman came down from the mountain. Still dressed in white, he looked like an immortal. After descending the mountain, the group of female disciples all respectfully said, "Sect leader." Only then did everyone realize that they were waiting for their sect master. This is the sect leader of the Mystic Moon female sect. She's also a great beauty. Damn, I didn't come here in vain. I can actually meet the sect leader of the Mystic Moon sect. He's a big shot ranked in the top 5. That's right. How can an ordinary person meet such a big shot in their lifetime? To be able to meet you today, it's definitely a blessing from our ancestors. In the midst of their conversation, a flying car could be seen speeding toward them from afar. After landing, a person got out of the car. Someone recognized him and said, "He is the island lord of East Pole Island and also the city lord of East Pole City." Hiss, the island lord of East Pole Island. He's also a big shot ranked in the top 5 on the Flaming Dawn continent. To be able to meet 2 big shots ranked in the top 5 at once today, it's not just smoke from our ancestors' graves, it's fire. At this moment, someone raised a question. "I heard that the island lord of East Pole Island rarely comes here. Why is he suddenly here today?" Yeah, I also heard that the island lord of East Pole Island once had a sad past here, so he basically won't come here unless there's something special. Maybe he heard that the sect leader of the mystic moon female sect is here, so he specially came to welcome her. Now that you put it that way, it does make sense. Both of them are ranked in the top 5. Now that the sect leader of the mystic moon female sect has come to his territory, it's normal for him to come out to welcome her. There's nothing wrong with that. In the midst of the discussion, everyone was certain that the island lord of East Pole Island was here to welcome Qian Xianyue. At this moment, the island lord of East Pole Island saw Qian Xianyue and said with a smile, "Sect leader Qian, you're here." Qian Xianyue came once a year, so he was not surprised. Qian Xianyue nodded slightly and replied, "Yes." She had more or less guessed the purpose of the island lord's visit, so she did not ask much. As they spoke, 2 people came down from the stone steps on the mountain path. It was a man and a woman. The man had delicate features, and the woman was pure and lovely. Someone noticed the 2 of them and could not help but say, F***CK. What a pair of B** cheese. What B** cheese? They're clearly an immortal couple. Yeah, that's what I meant. In my eyes, an immortal couple and a B** cheese are synonymous. You're just envious, jealous, and hateful. Yes, you're right. Soon, Immerse and Happy arrived at the foot of the mountain. At this moment, the island lord of East Pole Island cupped his fists and said, "I didn't know you were coming. I didn't know that Island Master Imo would be gracing us with his presence. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you." His tone was very respectful. Huh? What? What's going on? Everyone was dumbfounded. The island lord of East Pole Island is here to welcome this young man? Qian Xianyue also said enthusiastically, "Dragon Lord, if you have time, please come to our Mystic Moon female sect as a guest. We welcome you at any time." The surrounding people were once again dumbfounded. F***CK. So sect master Qian Xianyue is also waiting for him. Everyone thought that the island lord was here to welcome Qian Xianyue. They also thought that Qian Xianyue was waiting for the island lord. However, they never expected that the island lord was actually here to welcome this young man. And Qian Xianyue was also waiting for this young man. Who exactly is he? The island lord and sect master Qian Xianyue seemed to be very respectful to him. This is truly inconceivable. Even if Guan Songhai, the strongest person on the continent, came, sect master Qian Xianyue and the island lord wouldn't be so respectful. Could it be that this young man's strength is very terrifying? That's impossible, right? At this moment, the 20 disciples of the mystic moon female sect beside Qian Xianyue looked at Immerse's face in shock. Everyone's heart skipped a beat when they saw it. Isn't this the person that the sect has been talking about? The person who can summon a level 10 mutated beast. The person who destroyed the entire dragon clan. Thinking of this, all the disciples of the mystic moon female sect did not even dare to breathe loudly. They were not like the people around them who were still discussing. The more they understood how terrifying a person was, the more cautious they would be in front of this person. Chapter 487. Everyone thought that the East Pole Island Lord was here to welcome Qian Xianyue, but they didn't expect that he was here to welcome this young man. Even Qian Xianyue, the sect leader of the Mystic Moon sect, which was ranked 3rd on the continent, was welcoming this young man respectfully. One had to know that these 2 people were ranked in the top 5 of the continent. They were the strongest among the strongest. They were definitely big shots. Yet, Both of them were so respectful to this young man. They really couldn't figure it out. Immerse was a little surprised to see both of them welcoming him. He asked the East Pole Island Lord, "Do we know each other?" The East Pole Island Lord had naturally seen Immerse's portrait before. He said humbly and respectfully, "Island Lord Immo, you don't know me, but your name resounds like thunder in my ears. Hearing that Island Lord Immo has come to my island, East Pole Island is really honored. Naturally, I have to be the host. Please come to my humble abode and give me a chance to entertain you." Immerse turned to look at Happy and asked, "What do you think?" He didn't mind, but if Happy didn't want to go, he naturally didn't want to go either. Happy didn't say anything. He just looked at Immerse. His meaning was obvious. If Brother Immo wants to go, Happy can go. If Brother Immo doesn't want to go, Happy can't go. Immerse raised his head and said to the East Pole Island Lord, "Let's go then." The East Pole Island Lord immediately looked happy. Then he called Qian Xinhua, "Sect Leader Qian, come with us. It'll be more lively with more people." Xinhua nodded. "Okay." This surprised the East Pole Island Lord. Xinhua was a little cold and aloof, and she was in a high position. Therefore, she usually didn't get together with others easily. She came to East Pole Island every year to watch the sunrise. In the first few years, the East Pole Island Lord even invited her, but she rejected him every time. Later on, he stopped inviting her. This time, because she was right in front of him, he invited her out of courtesy. He didn't expect her to agree. However, the East Pole Island Lord thought for a while and understood. She was probably afraid that if she didn't agree, it would seem that she wasn't giving Island Lord Immo face. If they really infuriated Island Master Immo, he could easily wipe out the entire Mystic Moon female sect. Soon, the East Pole Island Lord called for 2 flying cars to bring Immerse and the others away. Immerse rarely rode in flying cars. He thought it was too slow. Compared to the flying hover shoes, he was already moving at the speed of a turtle. Not to mention his shadow step, which had reached the large success stage. However, he had to admit that this thing was indeed comfortable to sit on. There were no bumps. It was very spacious inside, and one could even stand or lie down. The most important thing was that the facilities were complete. There were entertainment facilities such as computers, toilets, bathrooms, and other living facilities. There were even luxurious flying cars, complete with a gym, a billiard hall, and various other facilities. It was a little too exaggerated. Riding on a flying car, they arrived at the East Pole City Lord's mansion after about 10 minutes. The City Lord's mansion was grand and majestic, and its main color was a fiery red like the sun. It fit the theme of sunrise on East Pole Island. After entering the City Lord's mansion, the East Pole Island Master arranged a banquet to entertain Immerse. The servants of the City Lord mansion did not know why the Island Master was so enthusiastic about a young man. The Island Master, as one of the top 5 experts on the continent, had always been proud and arrogant. Even if the top expert came, the Island Master would at most treat him to a cup of tea. But today he was so enthusiastic about this young man. Could it be that this young man's strength was even stronger than the number 1 expert? Of course not. But why was the Island Master so enthusiastic about him? They really could not figure it out. However, they knew that since the Island Master treated him so warmly, they naturally did not dare to neglect him. They were all very careful when they served him tea, for fear of making a mistake. At the same time, the news had already spread on East Pole Island. There were many foreigners who came to East Pole Island to watch the sunrise. They then spread the news in all directions. The news also spread rapidly on the internet. After all, it was about the 2 top 5 experts. The news spread very quickly. Breaking news. The East Pole Island Master invites a mysterious man as a guest. Even the sect master of the Mystic Moon sect has to bow and greet him. Who has such great respect? 2 of the top 5 experts are so respectful to him. Who is he? Reports with similar titles kept appearing on the homepage of major online platforms. Wang Yi's identity also attracted a lot of speculation. Could he be a hidden expert? I've never heard of him before. Even the top 5 rankers have to be respectful to him. Just how strong is he? Soon, Wang Yi's identity was also dug out. He's the new island master of Hunting Island Number 1. Wasn't Hunting Island Number 1 infected? I heard that Hunting Island Number 1 was infected 2 years ago. Since then, almost no one has been to Hunting Island Number 1. No, I accidentally saw it on the satellite map. Although most of Hunting Island Number 1 was infected, it was blood red. But in the central area, there was still green. No matter which hunting island he is the island master of, if he's really that strong, why haven't I heard of him before? Yeah, in the past 2 years, I've barely heard any news about him. Why did he suddenly pop up now? At the same time, in an inn in an ancient city. Han Jiansheng was holding a wine jug, pouring wine into his mouth while watching the boats coming and going on the river. At this time, Han Lubai quickly walked in. Dad, look. Han Jiansheng put down the wine jug and looked at the news on Han Lubai's multifunctional watch. A moment later, a look of shock appeared in his eyes. Seeing the shock on her father's face, Han Lubai also smiled. For so many years, her father didn't seem to be interested in anything. Other than when he was talking to her, he would have other expressions. At all other times, he seemed to be a wastrel, and even if something big happened in front of him, he wouldn't show the slightest hint of surprise. She didn't expect him to show such a shocked expression today. In fact, Han Jianxing couldn't help but be shocked. Just a year ago, when he had first met Immerse, this guy had been just a wasteland hunter. In a year, he had reached the point where 2 of the top 5 experts of the flaming origin continent greeted him with a smile. This was too exaggerated. But thinking about the strength this kid showed in the ancient land of the dragons, it was reasonable. Even so, he was still shocked. A moment later, he slowly said, "It seems that he's the one who destroyed the dragon race." Han Lubai rebuked, Dad, look at you. Dad, look at you. Why didn't you let me chase after him earlier? Why did you have to let him reach your strength? Now, he's already able to make 2 of the top 5 experts bow to him. If I chase after him, how can I be worthy? Han Jiansheng rolled his eyes at his daughter. You're a girl. Can't you be more reserved? Chapter 488. Immerse stayed in the City Lord's mansion for 3 days. During these 3 days, he went to watch the sunrise with Happy every day. During these 3 days, more and more people rushed here. They all saw the news on the internet and knew that a person that even the East Pole Island Master had to treat with respect had appeared here, so they rushed over to watch the show. One must know that on the Flaming Dawn continent, people like the East Pole Island Master were basically at the top. No matter how strong your other forces were, he wouldn't care about you. Even the government had to be careful in front of him. The only people who could make him lower his head were those who were far stronger than him. If even the top 5 had to lower their heads, how strong would this person be? Who would be stronger if he were compared with the top-ranked ancient sect master of the Flaming Dawn ancient sect? However, these people were destined to return in disappointment. After watching the sunrise for 3 days, Immerse and Happy planned to leave East Pole Island. When they were eating in East Pole City, Immerse asked Happy, Happy, where are we going next? Happy still looked at Immerse with his big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Immerse smiled and said, I heard that the aurora on North Pole Island is very beautiful. How about we go there to see the aurora? Happy nodded and still looked at Immerse with his big eyes that seemed to be able to speak. Immerse said, All right, let's go to North Pole Island now. When the East Pole Island Master heard Immerse's words, he suggested, If Island Master Immo just wants to see the beautiful scenery, we recently discovered a magnificent place called Sea Heart Waterfall. It's only 1,000 kilometers away from here. Island Master Immo, why don't you go take a look? You definitely won't be disappointed. Sea Heart Waterfall. This was the first time Immerse heard of it. He asked, What's Sea Heart Waterfall? The East Pole Island Master said, It's a deep ring-shaped hole in the vast ocean. The surrounding seawater keeps flowing into the hole, forming a ring-shaped waterfall. That's why it's called Sea Heart Waterfall. When Immerse heard this, he felt that it was strange. He said to Happy, Let's go take a look then. Happy nodded slightly. The East Pole Island Master said, Then I'll lead the way for Island Master Immo. As he spoke, he ordered his men to prepare a water airship. He said, You won't be able to experience the wonderful scenery on the way to the Sea Heart Waterfall if you take a high-altitude airship. You can only feel it when you're close to the surface of the water in an airship. Wang nodded. The airship was about 30 meters long. The facilities inside were also very complete. There was also a driver and 5 service staff. Immerse and the others boarded the airship, and it slowly took off. After rising to a height of about 2 meters, it began to fly close to the surface of the water. Gradually, East Pole Island grew further and further behind them. In the end, East Pole Island turned into a small black dot and disappeared from their sight. At this moment, they were surrounded by a vast ocean. It looked no different from an ordinary sea. Airships mainly relied on particle thrusters to fly, and their speed was very fast, reaching more than 500 kilometers per hour. After flying for about half an hour, the sea in front of them finally began to change. The surface of the sea was no longer dark blue. It was black. It was as black as ink. Traveling on such a sea gave people the feeling that they were traveling on abyss. It made people panic. The East Pole Island Lord explained to Wang Yi, "Island Lord Mo, we're currently in a place called the Black Sea region. The name of the Black Sea region doesn't sound very good, but it actually has many wonderful features." Immerse tilted his head, waiting for him to explain. However, he didn't explain. He only said, "Island Lord Mo, please take a look." As he spoke, he patted the cockpit door and asked the pilot to open it fully. Then, he pointed behind the airship. Behind the airship, on the surface of the Black Sea, a trace could be seen extending into the distance. At this moment, the color of the trace was quietly changing. At first, it turned green. It was as green as a blade of grass, and it extended to the horizon in a single year. Then, the trace turned green again. Then it turned red, yellow, purple. This mark was constantly changing colors. It was as if it was equipped with neon lights. The East Pole Island Lord took out a handful of something that looked like sand and threw it toward the surface of the water. The surrounding water instantly changed into a variety of colors. And in the water below these colors, there were colorful fishes swimming. When Happy saw this, he couldn't help but open his mouth slightly. His face was full of surprise. When Immerse saw Happy's surprise, he was also in a good mood. They continued to fly forward. They passed by a sea valley in front of them. The so-called sea valley had waves that were hundreds of meters high on both sides. Passing through it was as if they were passing through a canyon. The surprising thing was that the waves that were hundreds of meters high on both sides of the sea valley looked very dangerous, as if they would crash down at any time. But in fact, the waves wouldn't crash down at all. The East Pole Island Lord introduced, "We discovered this more than 50 years ago. We couldn't figure out the principle. That's why we never opened it." After passing through the sea valley, they continued to fly forward for more than an hour. At this moment, they heard a rumbling sound coming from ahead. At first, the rumbling sound wasn't loud, but as they got closer, the rumbling sound became louder and louder. In the end, it was like a deafening roar of a tsunami. The airship slowly rose. When it was 50 meters high, they finally saw a huge cliff 100 meters in front of them. The sudden appearance of such a huge cliff in the middle of the sea was shocking and novel. Gradually, the altitude continued to rise. Only then did they see clearly that it wasn't a cliff. Instead, it was a huge circular waterfall. This huge circular waterfall had a radius of more than 20 kilometers. The surrounding seawater kept pouring into this huge circular hole. The deafening rumbling sound was the sound of seawater pouring into the hole. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, it would be very difficult to imagine that such a huge hole would appear in the middle of the sea. This huge hole was pitch black and deep. It was like a huge eye on the planet, staring at those who dare to peep at it. Even someone as experienced and knowledgeable as Immerse was deeply shocked. As for Happy, she was so shocked that she couldn't speak for a long time. It seemed like she didn't know how to speak in the first place. After a long time, Happy gently tugged at Immerse's clothes. There was some fear in her eyes. Immerse knew that Happy was afraid. He said, "Let's go now. However, Immerse wasn't afraid. Instead, he felt a sense of intimacy from this huge and deep eye. This feeling came out of nowhere. He couldn't help but say in his heart, "System, sign in." Chapter 489. Immerse looked down at the huge, circular waterfall in the vast sea from the sky. He suddenly had a feeling. He said in his mind, "System, sign in." The system replied instantly, as usual frowny face, "Sign in successful. Sign in location. Sea Heart Waterfall. Sign in reward. 1 dragon pool." Immerse was slightly puzzled. Dragon pool? What the hell? He looked at it in his mind. A small item appeared in the storage compartment of the system backpack. Looking carefully, he could see that this small thing looked the same as the huge circular waterfall in front of him. And what was strange was that there was water flowing down from this circular waterfall. At the bottom of the circular waterfall was a deep pool. The bottom of the pool couldn't be seen. There seemed to be black shadows swimming inside. He looked at the item description, carefully frowny-faced dragon pool. Can be used to raise creatures above the grand desolate master level. These creatures can evolve into dragons after a certain period of time in the dragon pool. Different species can evolve into different dragons. Seeing this, Immerse felt like cursing Brother Knife. He had spent so much time, so much energy, suffered so much to evolve into a dragon. But now, as long as he entered the dragon pool, he could evolve into a dragon. It was really a little heart-wrenching. But when he continued to read the introduction, he was relieved. These dragons that evolved through the dragon pool will be 100% loyal to the host. It turned out that he had suffered so much and was going to be the boss after evolving into a dragon. And these guys seemed to evolve very easily, as long as they entered the dragon pool. But after they evolved into dragons, they could only be his underlings. Creatures equivalent to the Grand Desolate Master level weren't easy to find in the Flaming Origin Continent. He would probably have to go to the hunting grounds after the 20th to find them. However, Immerse planned to take Happy to see the beautiful scenery of this world, so he didn't plan to go for the time being. Immerse looked at the Sea Heart Waterfall. The terrain here was rather strange. He probed with his dragon will. However, after probing about 100 kilometers deep, he couldn't probe any further. It was as if something had stopped his dragon will. At this moment, Immerse wasn't interested in exploring. Half an hour later, they left the Sea Heart Waterfall. They hurried to North Pole Island. They had been on the road for about 3 months. They had seen almost all the scenery along the way. Gradually, as they got closer and closer to the north, the temperature dropped. Of course, with Immerse's current physique, he wasn't afraid of the cold at all. But Happy was afraid. Immerse bought a set of winter clothes for Happy. A thick white cloak, a white scarf, and white gloves. A white hat. Dressing up like this gave people a different feeling. 2 days later, they arrived at the North Sea. At this point, a thick layer of ice had formed on the surface of the sea. Immerse scanned the area with his dragon's will, but there was no one there. Immerse teleported to North Pole Island. Although North Pole Island was called an island, it was actually very large. It was said that the area was about the same as Huaxia on Earth. Such a huge area was a world of ice and snow. In this world of ice and snow, other than the white of the ground and the blue of the sky, there were almost no other colors. On the North Pole Island, there was a North Pole City. The people living in North Pole City were all gold diggers. These so-called gold diggers weren't real gold diggers, but rather looking for crystal ores. Geologists had long explored this continent. There was a small amount of crystal ores underground, which weren't worth building mines to mine. But there were often small amounts of crystal ores that were washed into the shallow layer of ice and snow by underground rivers and were discovered by people. Gradually, some poor people who weren't so well off came here to try their luck and see if they could find crystal ores. In the early years, there were really people who were very lucky from time to time and became rich because they found crystal ores. Thus, a large number of people began to flood into North Pole Island to try their luck. They were known as gold diggers. Due to the increasing number of gold diggers, specific residential areas were formed on North Pole Island. In the end, a city was formed here, and it was called North Pole City. These people were all poor and didn't have much money to build a city, but they had to resist the wind and snow, and also resist the harassment of some wild beasts. So they used local materials and cut ice to build a city and houses. Thus, North Pole City was also called Ice City. Immerse and Happy entered Ice City together. When these people looked at him and Happy, their gazes were not very kind. Happy was a little puzzled. She gently tugged at Immerse's sleeve. She meant that they didn't offend these people, so why did they seem to treat them as enemies? He gently patted Happy's hand, indicating that she didn't need to worry. Then, he plundered these people's dragon senses. After reading these people's memories, Immerse understood the whole story. It turned out that more than 200 kilometers northeast of North Pole City, the ice layer suddenly collapsed, revealing a huge ice cave. People all went to check the ice cave. What they saw was incredible. On the walls of the ice cave, there were tens of thousands of deep caves. Many people found crystal source ores in these caves. Thus, more and more people rushed into the ice cave. And now, almost every cave had been occupied by people. Some people even fought to seize these caves. So, when they saw outsiders, they thought that they were here to snatch their caves. After understanding this, Immerse shook his head and stopped paying attention to these people. He and Happy found a restaurant. After traveling for more than half a day, they wanted to eat a hot meal. The food here was very simple. Most of it was local desolate beast meat. As for vegetarian dishes, there were almost no vegetarian dishes. After all, it was easy to imagine how difficult it was to grow vegetables in this world of ice and snow. However, the desolate beast meat was cooked very well. Immerse was also hungry. He ate in big mouthfuls. Happy also had a good appetite and ate some. While they were eating, the waiter in the restaurant came over to pour them some water. "Esteemed guests, you're also here for the ice cave, right? Then you're really late. Now, all the caves in the ice cave have been occupied." Immerse shook his head and said, "We're only here to admire the aurora borealis." The waiter was stunned. "You traveled hundreds of thousands of kilometers just to see the aurora borealis?" Immerse nodded. "Yes." The waiter nodded. "You two are really in a good mood." Immerse knew that the waiter clearly didn't believe him. However, he didn't care. But since the waiter mentioned the ice cave, he planned to go take a look with Happy after they finished admiring the aurora borealis. After all, they had already traveled hundreds of thousands of kilometers. If they didn't go take a look, they would have doubts in their hearts. What was in the ice cave? Chapter 490. For 90, Aurora. The next morning, before dawn, Immerse and Happy arrived at the east side of East Pole City. At this moment, a green light screen seemed to be hanging down from the sky, and this light screen was still shaking. After a while, the light screen gradually turned blue, alternating between blue and green. In the dark blue night sky, the light screen was shaking faster and faster. It was as if the fairies in the sky were washing muslin. After a while, the light screen calmed down. Immerse turned to look at Happy. He saw that Happy seemed to be very shocked. When she was on Earth, most of her childhood memories were spent in the base. After coming to the Flaming Continent, she basically lived on Hunting Island 1. She had never seen such a magical scene. Behind them, on the city wall of East Pole City, a few guards looked at Immerse and Happy's backs from afar in disgust. "They can't really be here to see the aurora, right? You're talking nonsense. Have you ever heard of someone running hundreds of thousands of kilometers just to see the aurora? I think it's strange too, but if they want to rob those ice caves, why don't they hurry up and go there instead of wasting time here? Who knows what they're up to? Anyway, they definitely don't have good intentions." Happy seemed to like the aurora, so Immerse stayed in North Pole City for a few more days. He watched the aurora for 5 days, and during these 5 days, the ice cave also changed. It was said that several major forces of the Flaming Continent had already sent people to take a look. Finally, on the 6th day, The three most powerful forces of the Flaming Continent, the Ancient Flame Sect, the Ancient Dragon Sect, and the Mystic Moon Sect, had already sent a large number of disciples to North Pole Island. After coming to North Pole Island, they didn't go to North Pole City, but went directly to the huge ice cave. The three sects were basically led by one of their elders. Each sect sent 200 to 300 people. When the gold diggers saw the people of the three sects arrive, they all subconsciously retreated, and none of the gold diggers dared to say a word. Although they were unhappy, in the face of the three most powerful forces of the Flaming Continent, what did they dare to say? Did they not want to live anymore? The first-ranked elder of the Flame Origin Ancient Sect extended his hand and gestured to the other two sections. They wanted the two sects to make the announcement. However, the elders of the two sects returned the greeting and made an inviting gesture at the same time. The two sects did not dare to be arrogant in front of the Flame Dawn Ancient Sect. The elder of the Ancient Flame Sect nodded his head. What he meant was that since that was the case, he would gladly oblige. Although he didn't intend to give in, he still had to be polite on the surface. Then he turned to the last disciple of the Flame Dawn Ancient Sect leader and said, "Jioping, you do it." Jioping was the sect master's personal disciple. He was also the next sect master who was appointed by the sect master. Nowadays, the sect master rarely showed himself. The affairs of the sect were all handled by a few elders. And now, these elders are consciously pushing Jioping out. Now that he had reached the Grand Desolate Master level, it was time for him to slowly take over the Flame Beginning Ancient Sect. That Jioping had a handsome appearance, and he looked refined and courteous, like a modest gentleman. He didn't have the arrogance of the disciples of the other sections. He cupped his fists and bowed to the thousands of gold diggers present. Then he said, "Everyone, it's a good thing that you found Crystal Source or in this cave. Our Flame Dawn Ancient Sect is also happy to see everyone become rich. However, a few days ago, the experts of our Flame Dawn Ancient Sect, Ancient Dragon Gate, and Mystic Moon Female Sect have analyzed these caves and found that there's a certain gas element inside. This gas element has never appeared in our Flame Dawn continent before. According to our research, this gas is extremely unstable and can easily explode. Furthermore, this gas came from a hunting ground called Earth. When the gold diggers heard this, they were all shocked. From a hunting ground? How is that possible? One had to know that in theory, the gas from Earth could have been brought to the Flame Dawn continent by humans. However, it was impossible for it to appear in this cave. Therefore, there must be something fishy about this. Jioping paused and looked at the gold diggers around him. Then, he continued, "Therefore, our Flame Dawn Ancient Sect, Ancient Dragon Gate, and Mystic Moon Female Sect plan to work together to find out what dangers are in this cave. Before we figure out the dangers in this cave, it's best for everyone to stay away from this ice cave." The gold diggers looked at each other. In the end, a few gold diggers said, "In that case, the three sects are also thinking about everyone's safety. We thank the three sections." Saying this, he cupped his fist towards the three sects and slowly left. With the first, the second, and third were simple. Then, more and more gold diggers turned and left. Of course, they didn't believe Jioping's words. These gold diggers couldn't survive in other places on the Flame Dawn continent, so they came to the North Pole Island. They had experienced the coldness of human nature and seen all kinds of people. They naturally knew that Jioping's words were just empty words. In fact, the three sects clearly knew that there were many caves here and that there were many crystal source ores in these caves, so they wanted to take over these caves. They made it sound dignified, but they were actually a bunch of bandits. However, in front of the three sects, no one dared to resist. They could only grit their teeth and swallow it down. The disciples of the three sects watched as the gold diggers around them gradually left. Although they didn't say anything, their faces were expressionless. However, their eyes revealed a hint of pride. This was the strength of the three great sections. This was the pride of the disciples of the three sections. In the entire Flame Dawn continent, No faction dared to fight against the three sections. It was also at this time that Immerse and Happy arrived. When they saw the gold diggers slowly leaving, Happy was a bit puzzled. Immerse casually plundered the memories of one of the gold diggers and understood the whole story. He shook his head slightly, but didn't care. In this world, there were many hardships. He wasn't the parents of these gold diggers, nor was he their friend. He had no obligation to stand up for them. If he had to intervene every time he encountered injustice, then he wouldn't be able to do anything in his life. At this time, one of the gold diggers saw that Immerse and Happy were still going forward. He sneered and muttered to himself, "The three sects have already taken over the catacombs, and there are still people looking for trouble." Huh! Some people even stopped and turned to look at Immerse's back. They were waiting to see Immerse make a fool of himself. The hearts of these people were all in a state of uneasiness and uneasiness. At this moment, someone suddenly remembered, "Hurry up and tell the sect about Island Master Mo's arrival. Perhaps this can be considered as making up for our mistakes." Therefore, they hurriedly contacted their uncle masters. When their martial uncles heard this, their hearts trembled. They asked, "Are you sure it's Island Master Mo?" Those people replied, "We didn't dare to verify his identity. However, he looks exactly the same as Island Master Mo's portrait that was passed down by the sect." When those martial uncles heard this, their hearts trembled again. One of them said, "Did you offend him?" Those people's voices were much lower. We didn't mean to. We didn't recognize him at all." When those martial uncles heard this, they said, "You're on your own." With that, they hung up the call. They looked at each other in dismay once again. It's over. It's really over this time. Even their martial uncles said so. Weren't they really finished? At this moment, those martial uncles quickly reported this matter to the Ancient Dragon Sect's elders. The Ancient Dragon Sect's elders immediately notified the elders of the Flame, Beginning Ancient Sect, and the Mystic Moon Sect. Therefore, in just a few minutes, the three major sects were on high alert. Under such circumstances, Immerse and Happy slowly appeared in front of everyone's eyes. More than 1,000 people were present, but no one made a sound. Immerse was a little confused. What was going on? Chapter 492. When Immerse and Happy crossed an ice hill and appeared in front of the crowd. The crowd of more than 1,000 people actually stood in an orderly manner, all of them silently and solemnly. Not a single person uttered a single word. Immerse was a little surprised. However, after casually plundering the memories of two people to check, he knew the reason for this. They knew that he was coming. At this moment, three elders who looked to be in their 70s or 80s walked quickly towards Immerse. Two of them were men, and one was a woman. The men were wearing the sect master robes of the Ancient Dragon Sect and the Flame Dawn Ancient Sect. The woman was wearing a white robe with gray patterns on her sleeves. Obviously, she was an elder of the Mystic Moon Female Sect. They walked quickly to Immerse's side and said, "I didn't know you were coming. I didn't know that Island Master Mo would be coming. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. I heard that a disciple offended Island Master Mo. Please tell us what you want to do with them. It's time for our Ancient Flame Dawn Sect to reorganize our sect." Immerse did not pursue the matter. He only wanted to teach those people a lesson. There was no need to harp on it. After all, his current strength was second to none in the Flame Dawn continent. If he still harped on a few small fries like before, he would be too petty. He shook his head and asked, "Have the three sects found anything in this ice cave?" The three of them looked at each other. The elder from the Mystic Moon Female Sect spoke first. "We didn't find anything substantial. However, there are unknown gases in all the caves. We've done some preliminary research on the unknown gases, but we haven't come to any conclusions yet." Immerse didn't want to expose their true purpose. He only asked, "Do you mind if I go down and take a look?" The elders of the three sects did not dare to mind at all. No matter how unwilling they did not dare to show it on their faces. Of course, please go ahead. Island Master Mo, however, Island Master Mo, we haven't explored the end of these caves. There might be danger inside, so for your safety, don't go too far after entering these caves. Immerse nodded and said, Island Master Mo got it. Then, with a thought, a person that looked exactly like Immerse began to materialize beside him. At first, it was bones. The bones quickly extended and formed a complete human skeleton. Then, muscles and blood vessels appeared on the skeleton. There was also a heart in his chest. Finally, the skin covered the body. It formed a human being, a human that was exactly the same as Immerse. This was Immerse's virus clone. In the past, the virus clones could only be formed from the flesh and blood of infected people. But now, Immerse could already induce the virus, and then make the virus quickly divide and replicate. In the end, a complete individual was formed. When the crowd saw Immerse's method, they realized that he had created an exact replica of himself out of thin air. Furthermore, this person could blink and walk. It was no different from the main body. This made them all widen their eyes. What kind of godly method was this? However, this was only the beginning. Then, the second, the third, the fourth, the 100th. A total of 100 doppelgangers were formed. Everyone was dumbfounded. Creating a doppelganger out of thin air was already shocking enough. Now, he had actually created 100 doppelgangers. This was simply not something that a human could do. After that, Immerse gave the order. Go! The 100 doppelgangers immediately jumped out of the large ice cave. Then, they randomly jumped into the caves on the walls of the ice cave. When the elders of the three major sects saw this, they all cried bitterly in their hearts. But they did not even dare to fart. Not to mention other things, just the method of creating 100 doppelgangers out of thin air was unheard of. In the face of such an expert, what else did they dare to say? Even if they knew that this expert was here for the crystal source ores, they did not dare to say anything. Immerse controlled the 100 doppelgangers and entered the 100 caves around the ice cave. These caves, as a whole, went downwards. They went deeper and deeper. After walking for more than 500 meters, his doppelgangers discovered that crystal source ores began to appear on the ground. At first, there were not many crystal source ores. They only appeared on the walls occasionally. After walking for another 5 kilometers, there were more and more crystal source ores. There were already specks of crystal source ores on the walls, as many as the stars in the sky. After walking for more than 10 kilometers, there were even more crystal source ores on the ground and on the ice walls on both sides. Furthermore, the top of his head was filled with crystal source ores. The crystal source ores emitted a fluorescent light, illuminating the entire cave green. Immerse had read some information about crystal source ores before. However, those crystal source ores were basically within 1 cubic meter. If there were 10 crystal source ores, it would be considered a very high-quality crystal source ores. Now, these crystal source ores were basically all over the walls of the cave. This greatly surprised Immerse. What was certain was that the crystal source ores here were not naturally formed. The caves here seemed to be man-made. The crystal source veins in this place were also artificially embedded in the surroundings. There were more than 1,000 caves here. He did not know how deep each cave was. If there were so many crystal source ores in each cave, then how many crystal source ores were there in the entire ice cave? Even the 3 great factions and the former dragon clan would not be able to take out such a huge amount of crystal source ores. What kind of person, what kind of faction would hide these crystal source ores here for? With such doubts in his mind, Immerse ordered each of his doppelgangers to use their dragon senses to explore the cave as they continued to walk forward. His doppelgangers walked along the crystal source ores corridor. They continued to explore the cave with their dragon senses. After walking for about 50 kilometers, there seemed to be no change in the surroundings. However, at this time, all of Immerse's doppelgangers seemed to have reached the end of the cave 50 kilometers in front of them. Their dragon senses could no longer explore the cave. Immerse was puzzled. He clearly felt that there was still space in front of him, but his dragon senses could not explore it. This feeling was the same as when he used his dragon senses to explore the cave at Full Heart Waterfall. While puzzled, he controlled his doppelgangers and continued to move forward. However, after walking for about 10 kilometers, something strange happened. Almost all of his doppelgangers lost contact with him in an instant. It was as if there was suddenly no signal. Immerse could not help but be shocked. Chapter 493. The scene just now was very strange. Immerse's clones didn't detect any danger in the surroundings at all. But in an instant, he lost contact with these clones. It was like a phone suddenly losing its signal. Immerse frowned slightly. When the elders of the three major sects saw Immerse frown, their hearts trembled slightly. But before Immerse said anything, none of them dared to say anything to disturb Immerse. After a while, Immerse turned around and said to the elders of the three major sects, "Continue. You guys can continue." Then, he brought Happy and left the ice cave. He didn't know what kind of danger was in the ice cave. But losing contact with his clones just now made him feel uneasy. So he decided to leave this place for the time being. The three elders hurriedly lowered their heads and said, "Yes, yes." But when they came back to their senses, they all felt strange. Could it be that Island Master Mo didn't come for the crystal source, or? But if he came for the crystal source, or, why did he suddenly leave? The three elders looked at each other in dismay. But after a while, they suppressed the doubts in their hearts. Although they didn't know why Island Master Mo suddenly left, it was a good thing that he left. As long as Island Master Mo left, the crystal source, or here, would be divided equally among the three major sections. No other forces would dare to fight with them. Of course, they also kept an eye on it. Maybe Island Master Mo's clones just now found something wrong down there. Not a single one of his 100 clones came back. It's very likely that there's some kind of danger down there. So, it's best that we don't act rashly for the time being. Let's report this situation to the sects first, and then make a decision. That's all we can do. Thus, the three of them reported what they had just encountered to the sect. When the higher-ups of the three major sects heard that they had encountered Island Master Mo, they attached great importance to this matter. They also heard that Island Master Mo had hurriedly left after sending his 100 clones down. This made them even more interested in the ice cave and even more vigilant. Therefore, they sent more people and brought more equipment and instruments to explore the ice cave. As for Immerse, he had already left North Pole Island with Happy. Continue to travel the world, see all the beautiful sceneries in the world, and taste all the delicacies in the world. His days were spent comfortably and comfortably. 2 months later, news from the three major sects arrived. All the ice caves collapsed. About 500 disciples of the three major sects were trapped in the ice cave. The three great sects hurriedly organized people to rescue him day and night. Finally, on the 5th day, they managed to rescue the disciples. Contrary to their expectations, none of these disciples died, except for some minor injuries and excessive fright. After that, the three sects brought the disciples back to their sections. On one hand, they arranged for specialized doctors to treat them, and on the other hand, they arranged for a psychiatrist to intervene and treat them after the psychological creation. In the beginning, everything went smoothly. The injuries of these disciples were quickly healed. The disciples who were shocked gradually calmed down. But on this day, something unexpected happened. The disciples of the Flame Dawn Ancient sect lived in an apartment. A female psychologist was counseling a disciple who had been overly shocked. She had a warm smile on her face and said, "Hifeng, you've almost fully recovered. Today is the last treatment. After today, you can cultivate and live normally." The disciple nodded. "Thank you for taking care of me during this time." The psychologist smiled and shook her head. "It's what I should do." As she spoke, she turned around and packed her clothes, intending to leave. However, when she had just put on her coat and turned around, she was shocked, because He Fong, who was sitting on the chair just now, had already arrived behind her. He was face to face with her. The two of them were less than an inch apart. Moreover, there was a hint of fiery light in He Fong's eyes. The psychologist was slightly taken aback and asked He Fong it was fine if she didn't speak. When she said this, He Fong's gaze became even more fervent. He suddenly reached out and grabbed the psychologist tightly. The psychologist repeatedly shouted, He Fong, this is not good. Let go of me. Let go of me. If you don't let go, I'll scream. Only then did she understand that He Fong already had ill intentions towards her. He Fong ignored the psychologist's cries. His eyes flashed with a beast-like eagerness. He opened his mouth and bit down on the psychologist's neck. Hiss! This bite actually tore off a piece of flesh. The psychologist was in so much pain that she almost fainted. Her heart was filled with extreme fear. Just now, she thought that He Fong was just going to do something beastly to her. She didn't expect this guy to become a real beast. Help! Help me! The psychologist screamed out in shock. A sharp and ear-piercing voice penetrated the door and echoed in the entire corridor. At the same time, she kept struggling, but her strength was far inferior to He Fong's. She was tightly grabbed by He Fong and couldn't escape at all. Crack! The door was kicked open. Two disciples of the Flame Dawn ancient sect barged in. When they saw the scene in front of them, they were also stunned. There was a bloody hole in the psychologist's neck that was constantly spurting out blood. He Fong's mouth and chest were full of blood. It was easy to guess what he was doing. F***CK. He Fong, you son of a B***TCH, what are you doing? He Fong, I'm going to beat you to death. The two disciples pounced on He Fong. When He Fong saw this, he suddenly turned around and faced the two disciples. The strength of these two disciples was about the same as He Fong. They had both reached level 10. But now, He Fong was fighting without any regard for his life. And he didn't attack like a human. Instead, he pounced and bit like a beast. These two disciples were actually forced to retreat. During the battle, He Fong bit another disciple's wrist. That disciple felt the pain and hurriedly retreated. Just as they were fighting, the third disciple had already jumped in through the window. He picked up the psychiatrist and pulled her out of the room. At the same time, more than 10 disciples had already rushed over from the corridor. These disciples worked together and condensed a genetic martial art. After breaking He Fong's 2 legs and 2 arms, they were able to control him. At this moment, they took a closer look at He Fong. They saw that He Fong's eyes had already turned black. The fingertips of his hands were actually more than an inch long and were extremely hard. For fangs had also grown out of his mouth. He looked very scary. Although his arms and legs were broken, he didn't seem to care at all. It continued to try to get up and open its mouth to bite the disciples around it. Chapter 494. Immerse continued to tour the continent happily. On the other hand, the number 1 sect of the Flaming Origin continent, the Flaming Origin Ancient Sect, was undergoing a drastic change. He Fong was finally under control after biting 2 people in the Flaming Origin Ancient Sect. The other disciple took the opportunity to rescue the female psychiatrist. When they looked at He Fong again, the area around his eyes had turned greenish-black. Sharp claws and fangs had grown out. He was like a wild beast, constantly roaring. When he looked at the surrounding disciples, his gaze was like that of a bloodthirsty beast. A few disciples hurriedly went to inform their superiors. However, when their superiors hurried over, another scream was heard for the other side. A few more disciples hurriedly rushed in the direction of the scream. They saw that the female psychologist who was bitten just now had a mouth full of blood. Her eyes had turned greenish-black. 2 half-inch sharp teeth were exposed at the corner of her mouth. Her fingernails were also more than an inch long. When she saw these humans, her gaze was like that of a wild beast. When the other disciples saw this, they hurriedly went forward and tried to control the female psychologist. However, at this moment, another scream was heard from the other side. It turned out that the disciple who had his finger bitten off by He Fong had also mutated. At the same time, in the flaming origin ancient sect, the disciples' apartments were filled with screams. Disciples were mutating everywhere. One had to know that there were more than 80 disciples who were trapped in the ice cave. Now, these 80 disciples suddenly mutated at the same time. The surrounding disciples were caught off guard and were either scratched or bitten. Then, they mutated one after another. The speed of mutation was not fast in the beginning. After being scratched, it would take more than 5 minutes for the mutation to take place. However, when the disciples who were scratched went to scratch others, the speed at which these people mutated became faster. The more people there were in the middle of the mutation, the faster the mutation speed. 5 minutes, 4 minutes, 3 minutes, 1 minute. In less than 15 minutes, those who were scratched had their mutation speed reduced to 1 minute. When the higher-ups of the flaming origin ancient sect rushed over, more than 500 disciples had already been infected. When the elders of the flaming origin ancient sect saw this, they could only make up their minds and send out a wave of energy to kill these 500 disciples. After these 500 disciples were killed, all the remaining disciples fell silent. All of them wore pained expressions. Some of the disciples who were killed were their friends, while others were their brothers. Yet there was nothing they could do. They could only watch as their friends and brothers died here. However, their bitter and sorrowful emotions did not last long before they were replaced by shock. The muscles on the bodies of the mutated disciples who had been blasted into pieces of flesh and blood were wriggling rapidly. The wound was healing rapidly. There were even 2 disciples who were blasted into meat paste, but at this time, the meat paste was flowing. Then, they quickly converged. The silhouette of a human began to emerge from the meat paste. When the surrounding people saw this, they were all terrified. The great elder shouted, "Everyone, step back!" On the flaming origin continent, it wasn't rare for one to recover quickly after being injured. Even if some people were hit in the heart, they would be able to recover quickly in a short time. However, no matter who it was, as long as their head was blown off, there was basically no possibility of recovery. However, these 2 fellows had clearly been blasted into minced meat, yet they were still able to revive. How could this not make the crowd panic? The Great Elder, as a level 4 Grand Desolate Master, was unable to kill these 2 fellows. Moreover, it wasn't just these 2 fellows. The other mutated disciples who had just been blasted to death slowly stood up at this time. Seeing this, the Great Elder could only wave his right hand and condense an energy light shield. These mutated disciples were all shrouded in it. Those mutated disciples rushed towards the light shield one after another. However, the light shield did not move at all. Only then did the surrounding disciples let out a sigh of relief. At this moment, the other elders had also rushed over. After they understood the situation, they all began to speculate. Are they infected with some kind of virus? Is it the zombie virus? It doesn't seem like it. The zombie virus's infectivity is not so terrifying. Then what kind of virus is it? This needs to be carefully studied. After a simple discussion, they found a few virus specialists in the sect. The virus specialists put on their energy protective suits. This kind of energy protective suit had an outer and inner layer that was a normal physical protective suit. The interlayer in the middle was a layer of energy. This kind of energy was very good at isolating viruses. Basically, there was no known virus that could break through this kind of energy protective suit. After that, the Great Elder used the energy again to blast the mutated disciples within the light shield. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the 2 disciples carefully passed through the light shield and entered the range of the virus. They planned to collect some virus samples. However, at this time, Sanguisurincus suddenly grew out of the blood on the ground. These Sanguisurincus seemed to be alive. They slowly climbed along the legs of the 2 experts, climbed up their energy protective suits, and climbed up their bodies. The 2 of them were not panicked at first. After all, they were wearing energy protective suits. However, soon, their faces revealed a look of horror. They saw that on these Sanguisurincus, there were many small spikes. These spikes were constantly stabbing the protective suits. There were many small holes in the protective suits. The Great Elder who was outside was shocked. These protective suits were all made of special materials. The protective properties were extremely good. Even knives and swords could not cut open a crack. Now, the spikes on these Sanguisurincus could actually pierce through the protective suits. He quickly shouted, "Both of you, get out of here!" The two disciples hurriedly retreated out of the light shield. Just as they were retreating out of the light shield, the energy in the energy protective suits kept leaking out through the hundreds and thousands of small holes. When they reached the edge of the light shield, the energy in their protective suits had completely leaked out. At this time, the Sanguisurincus entangled their bodies again. The spikes kept stabbing their protective suits. The protective suit was easily pierced through as if it was made of paper. The two of them suddenly screamed in horror and pain. No. However, no matter how loudly they screamed, even if their elders were close by, they could not save them. On the contrary, the Great Elder saw that the two of them were beyond saving and raised his right hand. In his right hand, a mass of energy had already condensed. "Great Elder, what are you doing?" "Great Elder, please, I can still be saved." Boom. In the midst of their pleas, the two of them had already turned into two piles of blood. Chapter 495. The two disciples of the ancient flame sect had been killed by their Grand Elder. The other disciples in the surroundings were all extremely shocked, although they knew that the Grand Elder had no choice but to do so. If the two disciples had escaped, it would have caused more casualties. It was obvious that they had been infected with some kind of virus. The Grand Elder had finally managed to control the virus with the energy shield. If they had escaped, it would not have been so easy to control them again. At the same time, the ancient dragon sect, which was ranked second on the Flaming Dawn continent, was experiencing the same thing. In the end, their sect master had used a similar method to trap the virus. The Mystic Moon sect, which was ranked third, was also experiencing the same outbreak. The sect master of the Mystic Moon sect had used the same method to control the virus. However, she had only used the energy shield to control the virus. Within the energy shield, the infected disciples had been killed countless times, but they were still able to survive. This caused everyone present to be extremely terrified. They reported this situation to the island masters of the various hunting islands on the continent. After watching the video of the scene, the island masters fell silent. Some of the island masters even had a trace of fear in their eyes. Viruses had always existed on the Flaming Dawn continent, especially on the hunting islands. The island masters of the hunting islands had developed all kinds of viruses in order to allow the creatures on the hunting grounds to continue to mutate. The most typical ones were the zombie virus, vampire virus, and werewolf virus. Among these four viruses, the zombie virus spread the fastest and was the most destructive. Therefore, all the island masters of the hunting islands strictly controlled these viruses. However, no matter how powerful a virus was, it could always kill its host. As long as the host of the virus was killed, the transmission of the virus would be greatly reduced. However, this new virus could not be killed at all. Not only could it not be killed, but it also consumed a lot of energy to maintain the energy shield. Once the energy supply ran out, the shield could break at any time, causing the virus to flow out again. Many research institutions on the hunting islands brought many professional instruments to the three sects to study these viruses. Although the virus could not be brought out of the shield, they could extend the instruments into the shield to investigate. In the end, after 3 days of research, they came to a conclusion. This virus was the zombie virus. However, it was not the traditional zombie virus, but a mutated one. They called it the new zombie virus. These new zombie viruses had a stronger ability to spread and were very difficult to kill. Therefore, the three major sects agreed to let the virus research institutions of the hunting islands stay in their sects to study the zombie virus. However, just 5 days later, the situation changed again. On the 5th day, faint green spots began to appear on the skin of these researchers. especially around their eyes. Dark circles began to appear. At first, they didn't pay much attention to it, thinking that it was just because they had stayed up late to work. But later, as time passed, more and more green spots appeared on their bodies, and they were getting bigger and bigger. They finally panicked. After a virus test, a new type of zombie virus was detected from their bodies. This filled the hearts of these staff members with despair. They had watched the videos about the new zombie virus and knew what happened to those infected with the new zombie virus. They didn't want to die. However, if they did not enter the light barrier, once their bodies were completely controlled by the virus, they would lose their consciousness and attack humans like wild beasts. Thus, after some hesitation, some virus researchers reported this matter to the higher-ups of the 3 major sections. At the same time, they did some research on the virus in their bodies. In the end, they came to a frightening conclusion. The new zombie virus could be spread through the air. The zombie virus was very scary, but it was only spread through contact. And this new zombie virus could actually be spread through the air. In other words, everyone who went to the North Pole Island could have been infected. And now, all the disciples of the 3 major sects could have been infected. This discovery caused the 3 major sects to be extremely panicked. They hurriedly organized their disciples to conduct a virus test. As a result, 30% of the disciples of the 3 major sects were infected. It must be known that the 3 major sects had more than 1 million disciples combined. 30% of the disciples were infected, which meant that more than 300,000 disciples had been infected. Moreover, although the rest of the disciples were not infected, the virus could be spread through the air. Therefore, every second they stayed in the sects increased their chances of being infected. Thus, the disciples of the 3 major sects who were not infected began to flee the 3 major sections. Although the higher-ups of the sects knew about this, they couldn't stop them. If they didn't let them escape, were they supposed to let them stay here and be infected? At this time, the 3 major sects could only place their hopes on those research groups. Unfortunately, the research groups held a pessimistic attitude toward the new zombie virus. Many researchers had already entered the energy barrier on their own. This was tantamount to suicide. However, there were also a small number of virus researchers who found an opportunity to escape the 3 major sections. Without a doubt, these researchers had all been infected by the virus. If they escaped from the 3 major sects, the consequences would be unimaginable. Although the 3 major sects did their utmost to search for them, there were still 5 fish that escaped the net in the end. No one knew where they had fled to. The several hundred researchers who had been captured could only forcibly send them into the energy barrier. Previously, they had made a lot of contributions and sacrifices in order to research the virus. But now, if they were to leave, the whole continent might be in huge trouble. This was the truth. Although they couldn't bear it, they still had to send them into the energy barrier. However, although the 3 major sects barely managed to control the situation, they weren't the only ones who had entered the ice cave at that time. On the North Pole Island, many gold diggers had entered the ice cave. Even those who hadn't been to the ice cave had gone to the edge of the ice cave. And these people had basically all been infected by the new zombie virus. Therefore, this was a huge hidden danger. Although the 3 major sects thought of many methods, it was useless. In the end, they could only release a joint announcement to the world. Joint announcement from the Ancient Flame Sect, Ancient Dragon Sect, and Mystic Moon Female Sect. A new zombie virus has entered the Flaming Continent. This virus can be transmitted through the air and through contact. Remind everyone on the Flaming Continent to prepare a gas mask. If you encounter a person with a green body, black eye circles, fangs, and sharp claws, run away as soon as possible. Don't try to kill them because they can't be killed. That you're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.